Hello and welcome to the NFL DFS on the RotoRadar podcast. My name is Joshua Riemer, joined by none other than the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who's over on my right, Jared Block. Jared, how are you doing? And how are you feeling about this fine week of football that we have coming up?
Yeah, we were talking pre-show about schedules and times and things like that, and this is the final week of NFL being the solo of the three major sports. I know we still have MLB postseason going on, but frankly, I know you and I have both moved on from that for the most part, and so we're focused on NBA, we're focused on NFL. It's a really exciting slate, a 10-game slate where you have basically two totals over 45, and that's kind of it. And
Yeah.
I've never seen the quarterback position in more of shambles than it is this week. I think the last time I counted, there's like 12 QBs that could be in backup technically scenarios. So I don't know. It's going to be a weird week for us to digest, and we still have a lot of news Thursday morning, so lots of things to break. And so maybe we get some breaking news on the show that helps clarify things. But Josh, the main thing that I'm having trouble with right now, and that's probably not a bad thing to have at this point, is having too much money on FanDuel and DraftKings.
Yeah, man. It's definitely an interesting week. I don't think we've seen like this low total of a week in quite a while. And so to have all these games that are really low totals is it's gonna be an interesting task to take on. And it should be a lot of fun to break down today. Lots of teams on bye. I think four of them this week. The bye schedule is all funky, man. Like there's
It
four
is.
last week. There's four this week. There's like six in week 10. The bye schedule's all type of funky right now. But we have four this week, so it is a little bit shorter of a slate. Only 10 games that we have to cover. It'll probably take you and I 2 hours anyway. But without further ado, let's get this thing started, and I'll let you shout out our good friends over at Bet Online.
Yep. Thank you to BetOnline for being the sponsor, exclusive sportsbook of the RotoRadar ecosystem. Code ROTO, ROTO, gives you a 50% deposit match up to $1,000. Look, we're talking about size and total, but we're also talking about player prop bets. And I know we'll talk about the pick'em sites over on Underdog Fantasy and PrizePicks, but you can also bet straight up player props on BetOnline without having to parlay them. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about team totals, which is the thing that I've been pretty profitable at this season so far. We don't have Miami Dolphins on this slate, but I've been just hammering their team total overs, and it seems to
Yeah.
have worked out. Probably won't do that this week just because it is against the Eagles. But we'll talk about some team totals this week. There's only like three of them over 25, so it will be very, very tough to try to decipher some of that stuff. But it is what it is. So again, you can use Bet Online for many things: team totals, sides totals in general. First halves is something I've been looking at as well. So use code ROTO, ROTO, to get a 50% deposit match up to $1,000. Get in before the NBA season starts, and we'll have a lot of fun talking about props in that regard. Josh, let's go ahead. I know there's not really a great way to start this slate, but take your pick at the 1 p.m. window and see if we can find something here.
Yeah, let's start off with this Atlanta game. Falcons facing off against the Buccaneers here. Currently, Bucks are 2.5 point favorites at home. Over under is at 37. Let's start off with this Atlanta side. We continue to see Desmond Ritter evolve as a thrower. I know last week wasn't necessarily his best week. He had those three interceptions that was pretty bad, but 47 pass attempts, most he's had so far this season. First time he's gone into the 40s, 300 passing yards, two touchdowns. We were right on the Drake London stuff. That felt really good. Had a very, very big week. Just was missing that touchdown, but we saw him get multiple guys involved, including a guy that I think everyone was excited to see get involved in, Kyle Pitts. So this offense could be really rolling. Now they come into a team that, Tampa Bay, really solid defense overall. How are you approaching this Atlanta team, and is there any interest in this team?
I think Atlanta could be an interesting GPP team for a few reasons. I'm not really going to go out of my way to target any of them in cash games. Pitts now is at the point where if you missed the last 2 weeks, I don't think you can necessarily feel great about playing him in cash. So we'll avoid that conversation. And there are two main tight ends on this slate, and none of them are named Kyle Pitts. So I think that it's fine. Like if you're finally seeing this here, you're probably pretty happy about it if you are an owner and you held on to him for so long. But the window of time could evaporate just as quickly as it has come about. So I'm a little bit off of that. I think that in total, just in general, Atlanta Bijan Robinson's the only guy that I really think can stand out in tournaments here. I think Drake London, I think just price considered, everybody is just a little bit over the top of what I would hope to roster them at in terms of price. So Bijan's probably the guy, but again, I never like taking running backs against Tampa. So in short, I'm not interested in Atlanta really at all.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. I think I could potentially get behind the London stuff again this week. If you wanted to go there, this Tampa Bay team hasn't been that good against wide receivers, 25th ranked when it comes to giving up fantasy points. So I could see London potentially getting there, especially because like I expect this Atlanta team to lose this game. But it's just a tough spot overall, and away from home too. Even though it's not that far from home in Tampa Bay, I mean they're not traveling all that far, but still, in that scary Tampa Bay stadium as well, it's going to be tough for them. So I think staying away is just fine. I think the Bijan stuff is just tough to get to. I know he is this electric player, and we are all very excited about what he has, the potential he has. It almost feels like they aren't utilizing him the correct way, though, because we've
Sound
seen back to
familiar?
back weeks. Yeah, right. Yeah, seriously. We've seen back to back weeks where he scored 10 FanDuel points. 3 out of the last 4 weeks, he scored less than 11 FanDuel points, and some of these shouldn't have been that bad, man. Like I understand you not getting there against Detroit. That's a very good run defense and a very good defense overall. But against the Commanders and the Texans, like those are two spots where he definitely should have got there. Commanders, third worst team in defense when it comes to the running back position. This Houston team also not that good against the running back position. So like these are 2 weeks where we should have seen explosive weeks, and I feel like at 7,500 you're still pricing him at like almost the top. Like we've seen him at 8K this
Yeah.
year, but 7,500 is still a lot to pay for this guy. When I don't know if he gets utilized correctly. You're really banking on that. You're banking on a touchdown to hit value. You need like two to really get there this week, and it just doesn't feel like the right play.
Yeah. Tournaments, you got to make some stretches. So I would understand calls from this if this game gets anywhere interesting. Just feels like a slog type of situation. I mean, we just saw this Tampa team again play Detroit, but the total of that game was 26. So like I don't expect much out of this one at all. And I think that you got to pick and choose what you're going to do here. We'll talk about the running back position as we go along, but you have anywhere from 5 guys that are smash spots to evolving that into 7 or 8 if you want to get into tournaments here. That's where I think Bijan kind of fits in towards the tail end of that. And then I also think that people may look at this. I'm completely off of it, but just moving over to the other side, Rachaad White seems to be drawing a bit of interest because of price. I couldn't be less interested. The Falcons are allowing a bottom 10 fantasy point number against the running back position. Rachaad White's been very inefficient with his touches. But you take a look at the other side, who have Tampa really played that have been bad run defenses. The only bad run defense they've encountered has been the Bears, and everybody else has been elite. So I'm a little bit off of the Rachaad White stuff. I think on a week where we didn't have complete collapses from the Detroit backfield or the Rams backfield, we'd be talking about him more. But I want to hear your thoughts on things as we switch over to Tampa. I think this is a complete fade game in cash.
Yeah, completely agree. I just don't see a lot to love on this Tampa Bay side, to be honest with you. I mean, you have Rashad White, but Keyshawn Vaughn continues to get touches, and it looks like White's role is really diminishing. Sad for me as a big time Rashad White truther this coming into this year. Not happy about what he's been doing, but it's not like the wide receivers are in good spots either. Honestly, this Atlanta defense is like very underrated with what they've done
So
so
far,
far this year. Um, Again, like you said, so far there hasn't necessarily been. They've gone against Detroit, and I think that's the only like elite offense that they've faced off against. So like,
oh, they
there's
faced Philly.
definitely
That was prime time though.
Atlanta did.
Oh, Atlanta. Sorry, my bad. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, you're right. Jaguars in London. I don't know, weird spot.
yeah,
Yeah,
but like a London game, like in I don't know if that was the second week of the London for the Jaguars
first
or if it
week.
was the first week.
First week.
Even so, they're so used to playing over there. I don't want to strike it from the record, but it's just like it's a spot where I don't know. It's tough to get a idea of how good this Atlanta team is based on their opponents so far. What we can say is so far is that defense overall has been pretty good. I would say like a top 10 defense for fantasy purposes. And that's something that I think I'm just fine with staying away from everyone. I don't have any interest in the wide receivers or even in Baker or anything. So happy to
Yeah.
stay away from this one. Give any of your final thoughts on this Tampa team, and then we can move over to props.
Yeah. It's trending upward. I would like a better spot. Chris Godwin's seen closer to 20 targets in 2 weeks, and so that's something I'm keeping an eye on. Mike Evans still dealing with the hamstring, able to play through it. We'll see how that evolves. The one leaky spot that you can target from just an actual data perspective is that Atlanta is giving up fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Kate Otten was on a strong trend upward and then only got 2 targets last week. So if you want to take that, you can, but I think that's as far as I would want to go anywhere.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's look at some prop stuff. I have no interest. I can just start it off out the gate. I mean, I guess if you're making a lot of slips this week, if you wanted to take a London prop, I think that would be the only thing that I would have halfway interest in. 46 and a half receiving yards feels a little low after last week. So, um, yeah, that's it for me, though. I have no interest in anything else.
Yeah, I have one play here potentially, and it could actually be Rashad White's rushing receiving yards unders, 71 and a half. That's interesting. I could definitely get
Pretty
behind
high.
that. That's pretty high initially, so I don't mind that. Other than that, I'm off for the rest of the game.
Yep, for sure. All right. Pretty quick first game. Only took us 10 minutes. Let's see if this one does the same. Next game up is the Raiders facing off against the Chicago Bears. Currently, the Raiders are 3-point favorites. Over unders at 37 and a half. You mentioned QB controversy. This is where this one kind of starts, is that we are not expecting Justin Fields to end up playing. We are not expecting Jimmy Garoppolo to end up playing. So this could be a pretty ugly matchup, man. This could get pretty bad. Could be a Nathan Peterman versus Aiden O'Connell or Brian Hoyer show here, or Tyson Bagent as well, who was the guy who filled in last week when Justin Fields went down with that thumb injury. So let's start off with this Raiders side. Do we know if it's Aiden or if it's Brian yet?
We have no idea, considering that they started O'Connell a few weeks ago. I would say he's probably the guy, and if that's the case, I just don't have any interest in QBs in this game. I guess slight interest in GPPs if it is O'Connell, depending on the leash that they'll give him to throw. They were down that entire game that he started against the Chargers, and he was able to kind of do whatever he wanted. Still not producing in fantasy. We played him on DraftKings that week. He was the chalk. I don't think he would be the chalk this week if he would be announced as starter. There's just a lot going on, and I don't think you need to necessarily dumpster dive at QB this week. But the real interest of where I want to start with Vegas is Josh Jacobs. I think he is one of the best plays of the slate. 8K on FanDuel, 7,400 on DraftKings. I know that he has been a disappointment, all things considered, this year. Has flashed upside in 2 weeks. Really disappointed against the Patriots in terms of what you would expect from 27 touches, but that's what this is coming into here. As this offense continues to evolve, they continue to give Josh Jacobs the touch counts that we've seen from last season. And I think that it's only a matter of time before these start turning into touchdowns. Could have had a bigger day against Green Bay. I think that there's 20 FanDuel point upside here and at least 20 DraftKings points upside as well. I think the floor is relatively safe. I think it's a double-digit floor at this point, especially if we get a backup QB in there. And I think that's the Raiders, and we'll talk about Adams too here in a second because I know that's been the main piece of controversy news this week. But Josh Jacobs is one of the best, if not the best, running back plays this week.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. This Bears team giving up the most receiving yards to running backs out of any team in the NFL so far this season. Also giving up 4 touchdowns in the receiving game. And we've seen Jacobs have the ability to use that this year. Has had 5 or more targets in each and every game except for the first game of the season. And I think that should continue. We've seen all the way up to 11 targets against the Chargers. So, and that was with the Aiden O'Connell start. So, I think you can expect a pretty big check down game to Josh Jacobs with whatever quarterback is in. And I also think you can expect him to run the ball pretty well here against Chicago, who doesn't seem like an imposing run defense whatsoever. So really like the Jacobs call. I think that's really solid. let's talk about the wide receiver room. I think all the talk, like you mentioned this week, has been around Devontae Adams and the fact that he's not happy with the targets he's been getting. Total of 9 targets over the past 2 games. Not good stuff there. When you have one of the most talented wide receivers in football on your team, it doesn't get any better though with a backup QB. So like, I don't know how to feel about this one. Give me your thoughts on Devontae Adams and I guess this wide receiver room as a whole.
Yeah, I'll make it really simple. Devontae Adams is definitely getting that squeaky wheel stuff. I'm not concerned about the Jacobs role in that regard. But if Jimmy G's in there, he's been looking at Jacoby Myers. And I don't know if that's
Yeah.
a New England connection or what that is necessarily, but it is what it is there. And I think Devontae actually came out, quote tweeted this. Obviously, I think he signs off on this take from to Sean Reed, one of the beat reporters from Vegas. And the Athletic. He says, "My takeaway from Devontae Adams' comments: he values winning above all else, but knows the Raiders can't win at the level he wants to without the offense being significantly better. For the offense to be that, he needs to get the ball more. It's fairly simple." And then Devontae says, "Simple, thank you." So
Yikes.
yeah, I mean, it is what it is. If the Raiders had been winning these games, then it's a different story. I know they beat Green Bay, but at the same time, he was more of a decoy in that game. So the Raiders continue to shoot themselves in the foot in similar situations. I don't know. I think that they are in a spot where they're just not utilizing the best players on their teams. And Jacobs, I think, is trending in that direction. Devontae had he had some monster games early in the year and just hasn't gotten the ball when in situations where he needs to get the ball. So I think that's interesting. I'm not worried about the shoulder injury. I think he'll play through this. I think he'll be just fine. He has very good success against the Bears, obviously dating back to the Packers stuff. And that Bears defense secondary specifically hasn't improved at all. So I think you can play Adams in GPPs and feel really good about your situation. Obviously, it carries some more risk than you would think just because of the backup QB situation and because of the fact that we just might see him get 6 to 8 targets and give Jacobs the ball 30 times. I'm just not
Yeah.
sure where to read that necessarily, but if Adams continues to have his price lowered, I think this actually is probably the week where I would jump on that for tournaments because he is a very nice pivot off of Josh Jacobs at the same price.
Yeah, for sure. Can definitely get behind everything you said. Last thing I'll talk about with this Raiders team is Michael Mayer. We saw him really come out
Yeah.
and look really good last week. You get him at 4,900 on FanDuel, and this is a guy that's going up now against a bottom 10 defense in the Bears against the tight end position. So Michael Mayer. I'm not sure which one it is, honestly. I think it's Mayer. Michael Mayer, really solid spot. I liked him coming out of college, and I know I have my exposure to him in Dynasty this year, and I was excited about what happened last week, and I think it could potentially continue here, especially if you have that backup QB in there, especially if it's Aiden O'Connell, relying on your safety valve in a tight end. Definitely something that'll happen a lot. So, like this spot for Mayer for sure at a very cheap price tag. It feels like he didn't get the price bump that he deserved.
No, he definitely didn't. I would be considering him more, but at the same time, I think you want at least one of these Vegas pieces in cash, and then you kind of just go from there. I don't think you need to, but the matchup is good. I don't expect Jimmy to play. Apparently, it was very close to being a very devastating injury. Dodge the bullet is the key term that's been floating around. I just don't want to deal with that, so I'll probably end up just going with Josh Jacobs in cash and calling it a day. But I think that there are nice pivots off of them. I think that you could also talk yourself into some Bears on the other side potentially.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Let's talk about that Bears side. Let's talk about what the Chicago team plans on doing. Justin Fields, like I said, did not practice yesterday. Still waiting on practice reports today to see what happens. But I think the general consensus is that he's probably not going to play this week with this thumb injury. So most likely going to be, I don't know. Are they going to throw Nathan Peterman out there? Are they going to use Tyson again? I haven't heard an update on this.
Yeah, I would lean with Tyson. I think Peterman was a guy that was on the practice squad and then got bumped up and added onto the 53-man roster last week. So
Mm-hmm.
it does feel like that's going to be a thing where he will be the backup in this spot. Peterman will be, and I think that they will give Bagent the run here. I again don't want to touch this, and I can say right now that I don't think Justin Fields is coming back for a while. I could see them being in a spot where they put him on the IR or even season-ending thumb surgery. Like it's just one of those things where I think that it's not going to get any better. And why would the Bears even try to put Fields back out there when they know that they're just going to try to get the number 1 and 2 overall picks? It just doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. From that regard, I understand, Fields is good to go. He'll probably make a case to try to play, but it doesn't sound like he can grip the ball on his throwing hand. So if he can't do that, then he can't play in this game. Would say that we'll find that news out probably today. Anyway,
Put him
though,
at running back, man.
yeah, I
The running
mean,
back room has such a problem. Just put him at running back.
exactly right. I mean, yeah, at this point, you might as well, because we also know that Roshan Johnson didn't practice yesterday off of that concussion. Khalil Herbert's on the IR. Travis Homer's questionable with a hamstring. That seems to be an every year thing. Ebner also has a concussion. So the only healthy guy that we know coming into Thursday is Dr. Foreman, and I don't want to play that. He was 20% owned in cash last week. Thought that Chuba Hubbard was the better play overall, and it was. I don't know if the Bears are going to give Foreman 16 plus touches. I guess he's in consideration for cash, but at the price tags that he just got bumped up with this week, I think it's irrelevant, and I think that he'll just be a guy that gets 2% 2 to 5% ownership today or this week.
Yeah, I'm not going to say this Raiders defense is great, but I think it's good enough to where I'm really not interested in like a low upside spot in Foreman. Like, what is your ceiling on Deontay Foreman today
Ceiling's
or
probably
this
15
weekend?
because of 2
Yeah,
touchdowns, but
which
yeah,
is not bad. I mean, at 6,300, but like that's ceiling. That's everything going right. I don't think there's much more in there, much more in the tank for that play. So probably just happy to stay away here. And I don't know. When it comes to wide receivers, I just kind of want to stay away from this backup QB situation. I don't know much about Dyson Badgett, to be honest with you. And so I saw him come in and I was like, who is that guy? And I don't know. Wasn't all that impressed with his play overall in that Vikings game. I'm sure it was tough for him coming into that one, not expecting a start and then getting put out on the front line in a close game. But I think I'm fine with just staying away from everything.
yeah.
Maybe one thing would be a Cole Kmet, has a safety valve again, just like the other side of Michael Mayer. Could potentially be interesting, but I just probably stay away from this one.
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders haven't been completely awful this year.
Yeah,
I think that people kind of forget that.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I don't think they're a great defense, but in terms of fantasy, they are just in the middle of the pack everywhere. So I don't
mhm.
know. I know that Badgett saved DJ Moore's week last week, and that's fine. But again, like there's no reason to really go here on a game that has a 37 total, a Bears team total at 16.5. That's just ugly. That's terrible.
Yeah, for sure, definitely ugly. All right, let's go over to props or pick'em stuff and talk about that. Anything you like for pick'em stuff here? I think in general, there's obviously the Josh Jacobs stuff. I'd be
Yeah,
curious to see what it's lined at, because I'm sure it's not
we're
the
just not going to
best
get
number.
anything for a while here.
Well, you have half a pass rush receiving touchdown. You have 76 and a half rushing yards. I think both of those numbers are fine. I think I'd wait to get a pass and receiving or a rush and receiving yard line because I think he is really involved in the passing game this week.
Sure, I definitely don't mind that. I mean, look, Josh Jacobs, if he gets fancy numbers and more props over here, I think that I would say he's a top 5 player to look at. And jumping on it as soon as it comes out would be beneficial for you. Devontae Adams, if he comes in and has a reception line of anything under 7, I'll gladly take that too. I just think it's a spot where they'll probably go out of their way against the Bears defense to try to get that right. So I
Yeah,
would say that that's probably where I'd lean there, and then nothing on the Bears. I can't trust that team right now.
fair enough. All right. Anything else in this one? If not, let's move on to this next game.
Uh, Overall glimpse of the slate, there could be ways that Foreman becomes a little bit more of a conversation tomorrow. Mainly on DraftKings, though, I think at 4,800. On FanDuel, I think that there are way better, easier ways to get there, so you don't have to play any Bears this week. But at
For sure.
least if things fall where Roshan, like, look, do you think Roshan Johnson has any chance of playing this week?
I'm not gonna put it. I mean, it's 2.5. It's been 2 weeks now. Start today since he got the concussion. I don't put it out of his way to practice today, potentially get on the field and stuff. I mean, it's concussion protocol, so like once he's out, he's gonna be good to go. They're gonna full practice him most
Yeah,
likely.
but isn't that
Uh,
concerning? He didn't do that yesterday.
Yeah, it definitely is. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like a hamstring injury or like a hand injury where like you
Yeah,
can limited practice on concussion protocol. When you're on concussion protocol, you're completely out of practices. Um, if he full practices today, he'll play. If he gets any practice in this week, he'll play. And it's just a question of if. I'm not sure if he does. It's kind of 50-50 in my opinion.
fair
It's
enough.
2 weeks. A concussion shouldn't last. I mean, a concussion can definitely. We've all seen how concussions work in the NFL, but like, if it's a normal, especially with Roshan not having concussion history, it shouldn't. He should be good to go this week. But
Well, if
again,
he's
him
in,
not
do
practicing
we?
yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, if he's in, let's just say. I mean, right now it's hypothetical. We don't know, but let's just say he's in. Are you? Because I'm not interested in playing both running backs from a game total of 37. So I'll say that he is the weaker link of the two in cash, but he'll be owned in cash games if he's in.
Yeah, he definitely will be. I don't know if he takes over like a number one role here. I think they still use Deontay Foreman and stuff, and they kind of give him like like a 50% share of the running game, and I'm not sure if that's enough, even at a pretty cheap price tag of 5,900.
Gross. That's all I gotta
Gross
say there.
indeed. Gross indeed. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about this next game. A game that I want to talk about, or we're going to talk about it anyway. Browns facing off against the Colts. Browns 2.5 point favorites, over 40.5. Not even going to talk about what the Browns did last week because I think it's ridiculous, but we can talk about what the Colts did because they got embarrassed. I thought that game was going to be so much closer, man. I thought the Colts could win that game, and they did not. Gardner Minshew, worst week. Maybe it was all the emotions returning to Jacksonville and stuff. Who knows what it was, but just a bad week overall for him with 3 picks and a fumble. Now he has to face off against the toughest defense or one of the toughest defenses in the NFL in the Cleveland Browns. How are we handling Minshew here? How are we handling the Colts offense as a whole? Because it feels like a pretty firm stay away spot, in all honesty.
Yeah, you're fading everything. You're definitely not playing this team against Cleveland in Cleveland. No, in Indiana,
No,
in
in Indy.
Indianapolis. So I guess that's a bit better at home in a dome, but it's not going to get any better in terms of actual on paper stuff. The Colts don't want to throw Minshew out there to have him pass 55 times. It's just not going to be a
No.
thing. So while you may have salvaged part of his day throwing over 300 yards and getting a touchdown, I can't realistically go anywhere with this. It's a very easy fade in cash, and you shouldn't be reaching here in tournaments either.
It was all garbage time stuff, man.
All
I will
garbage
tell
time. It
you,
was great for Pittman and Downs,
yeah.
but
Oh, it was great for Pitt. I was a big Pittman fan and very happy to see him finally get there, and Josh Downs too. I think both of them getting there was very good for us, but not looking to bank on it again. And anytime you see Minshew throw the ball 50 times, you can assume that the Colts probably lost that game. And like you said, they don't want him throwing that many times. That's for sure. Uh, Talking about the running back room, we saw both of these running backs be very ineffective. Jonathan Taylor did not look good, 8 for 19. He did get it going in the receiving game, but I'm sure a lot of that was in garbage time as well. Zach Moss, 7 for 21. He also got involved in the receiving game, but again, probably a garbage time stuff. Fine for staying away from this team as a whole. After seeing what the Browns did last week, I believe in this offense or this defense way too much, and I'm perfectly fine with just auto fading against the Browns every week.
yeah, that's just what it is. It's very simple. So no interest there. And at some point, we'll see the JT stuff kind of teeter in that direction, but it won't be. I mean, maybe it's this week, but I won't be having any part of it.
It won't be this week. I'd be interested to see what the Colts schedule is to see when that week could possibly be if we can jump on early. But let's talk about the other side. Let's talk about the Browns and what they bring to the table. I mean, like the offense looked good enough to win last week. That's what matters the most. PJ Walker looked okay. I doubt Watson plays this game, man.
No, I don't think so either.
They said that they're in line to practice today, so like we'll have to see. But like all the shoulder stuff just looks awful, and he keeps saying like he can't put a timeline on things. Maybe that's more to play a mind game than anything else. But I don't know. Until you know exactly what's going to happen with this quarterback room, I'm super hesitant to side with any of these plays. And that's just the price of doing this podcast on Thursday instead of doing it
Yeah.
Sunday morning or something.
Well, there could be some. I think that the spots in general could be good for these Browns players. there's just a lot of question marks outside of the Watson stuff. So okay, well, let's do the QBs and then we'll do the running backs and then we'll do the wide receivers. I think Watson being in, I don't think I would trust playing much of that, if anything. And if he's out, then it would become a conversation on DraftKings where we kind of talked about it. We don't really want to pay down. You don't have to, because I think that there are guys at the top and guys in the mid range that make a lot of sense that are, actually QB1s in their system. I was going to say maybe PJ Walker under 5K on DraftKings is somewhat interesting. I think the floor is single digits. I think Watson's floor is also single digits, depending on what happens with this game. But I think that Walker could be a conversation on DraftKings in cash, but it is very early, and I don't even like that at the moment right now. So that's what that is. As far as the running backs go, Kareem Hunt, while he did get the score last week to put them ahead in that game, 15 touches, obviously looked great in that role. All things considered, he has a thigh injury and he did not practice Wednesday. We'll have to see, because he is a guy that misses a lot of Wednesday practices, jumps in here. Maybe we see Jerome Ford get a stronger role this week if Kareem Hunt's not able to go. And I don't think that they want to use Pierre Strong either. So I think this is a spot where I'm a little bit hesitant to say I don't know what to do here. Wide receivers kind of just comes down to who's playing quarterback. And I think that, I would have been interested in Cooper and Elijah Moore, but we just don't know that at this time. So Cleveland, I think, has some ways to get into some cash game consideration. It's just a lot up in the air right now.
Yeah, exactly. A lot up in the air is a perfect way to say it. I think I'm fine with just, kind of saying I'm not going to play the spot until I know anything. And honestly, like there's just better games on this slate that I think you should be targeting over this one. So that's where I lean with everything. Let's talk. Well, I guess we've talked about both sides. Anything else in this game? If not, let's move on to the pick'em stuff and talk about what we would take here. I doubt there's many numbers up for the Browns, but I'm sure there's some Colts numbers we can talk about.
Yep. Not much, right? I think this is a
Yeah.
spot where
Well,
I kind of like Pittman over 60.5 receiving yards, but I wouldn't touch that on this slate with so many options that I do like. So I'm okay with fading the game.
yeah, fine with fading. All right. Let's move on into the next game, which is one that I think is the most exciting game of the 1 p.m. window. Lions facing off against the Ravens here. Ravens 3-point favorites. Over under is at 43. Let's talk about this Lions team. I don't know. Did you see the Dan Campbell stuff? What are the pulling out of my
No.
pocket? What's this? A five? What is this? Because they got five.
Oh
You didn't
yeah,
see
I've
that,
seen it.
dude?
I've seen it.
I
I've seen
I've
it.
seen it like 30 times. I love it. It's just like a perfect example of why Dan Campbell created such a good culture in that Lions organization. But they come into this one on the road, facing off against a Ravens team that definitely had some hiccups last week against the Titans. I think a lot of people were expecting them to steamroll there, and until late, it didn't look like that. So let's talk about this Lions team first. This offense is just incredibly well put together, and I think you're
Yep.
starting to see Jared Goff. It used to be a situation where you were only really playing him when he was at home. The home road splits were so massive that you could really only play him at home and his weapons at home. But
Right.
we saw a really great game against Tampa Bay last week. I think that's one of his better games of the season, considering everything that went on. And so now you get a Baltimore team that definitely has some good defenders, definitely has a good defense, but how much can you believe in this Lions passing game to start out things?
You want to have some interest here, right? I think that that's a starter point. I think that the team total, even though they are underdogs on the road, is still strong enough. And I think it just comes down to the fact that, we feel pretty confidently that David Montgomery is not going to play this week. So you have to have interest everywhere for this Lions team because the touchdowns have to go somewhere. And so we got a spot where I think that obviously the wide receivers are as healthy as they've been this year. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of rivals some of the top wide receiver plays on the slate in Kupp and in Keenan Allen. We'll talk more about them as we go along here. But I think that you want to have some interest in Detroit, but I think that you have to try to get it in the running back room somewhere. and that is going to be potentially with Jahmyr Gibbs or Craig Reynolds. I would say that Gibbs is closer. Gibbs has been the closest that he's been in terms of giving it a full go.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it does feel like Craig Reynolds just matches up very, very well in the David Montgomery role. So I know that all three of them, Craig Reynolds and David Montgomery didn't practice Wednesday. Jahmyr Gibbs limited practice. We'll have to see what that really kind of comes out to today. I definitely could see David Montgomery being ruled out today for this weekend, but it will be between Gibbs and Reynolds. And I right now, I kind of side with the Reynolds spot just because I think that there's going to be a situation where if Craig Reynolds is good to go, they're going to use Jahmyr Gibbs in the way that they're going to use Gibbs normally with David Montgomery in, and that's a 8 to 12 kind of touch situation. I currently, for what it's worth, though, have Gibbs in my FanDuel lineup at the moment because he's 6,200. But I also could see this going in a spot where Reynolds is actually the primary back.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's definitely a chance where Craig Reynolds takes over that David Montgomery role, just like you said. And if that's the case, then I think he would be the go-to. I think Gibbs is definitely a solid tournament option and even a potential cash game option. I think the touches will be there. We know how much this Detroit team likes to run. That is the main way you attack this Ravens team is like you have to run the ball because their passing defense has been just incredibly good this year. Number one defense against the QB position in terms of fantasy points allowed. Number six against the wide receiver room. They've been really good overall, and so I would say like the running back is the way to use this Detroit defense or offense, and against this Ravens defense, and it's just going to be dependent on who practices and who doesn't. If Montgomery and Reynolds, I think we're good on saying Montgomery doesn't play this week, but if
Yeah.
Reynolds doesn't end up playing this week, is Gibbs just that much of a lock and load? Do you even consider getting off of it at all?
No, I wouldn't consider getting off of it. I
Yeah.
think that, you know, I don't know. Reynolds could easily just come in and play here, but hamstring and apparently two injuries, not just one. So I don't know. Maybe he's too beat up. We'll find out later today. But if Gibbs is good to go, I think that even if Reynolds is in, you're probably still trying to get there in cash on FanDuel. DraftKings, you can make cases that you don't have to do that because he is 6,300 there, but at 6,200 on FanDuel, where he's cheaper, you have to take that discount and go with it. So that is where I see that being a thing. You absolutely need three running backs. I know that we talk about that sometimes on the show being like in cash, I always try to get three running backs anyway, but in tournaments, you can always make cases where you have four wide receivers or, getting a tight end in there. I think this week you have to really, really try your best to get three running backs in there in any format, even in tournaments.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that for sure. All right. Anything to talk about with the wide receiver room or with Sammy Laporta? I think that this is just a really tough test to go up against in Baltimore, and
Yep.
because of that, I just don't find myself with a lot of interest here.
Tied his season high in targets last week. I don't really know if I want to do that again. We played him in the boom spots, and he definitely boomed in that scenario. But against this spot, I think he's just priced out of the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk about the other side. Let's talk about Baltimore. Like I said, struggled against the Titans at times last week, but they come in to face off against a Detroit team that definitely has some solid defense. It definitely has one of the best run defenses, if not the best run defense in the NFL
Yeah.
right now. Um, I think I'd be interested in a guy like Zay Flowers. I know the optimizer is really interested in Zay Flowers this week. He's lined pretty low, and
Yep.
he's in a really solid spot. The targets have looked really good. I think he's Lamar's main guy right now. I really like the Zay Flowers spot, but I don't know. I could get behind Mark Andrews as well. This Detroit team hasn't done a good job of covering the tight end position. So if you did have that extra money, like you were mentioning at the beginning of the show, then maybe a guy like Mark Andrews is a way to fill that.
Yeah. Flowers is definitely the guy that I'm most interested for cash. None of these guys got the price bump because they played on London and Sunday morning, and the slates I think just probably came out before everything was finalized here for this one. So you really like what you see from Flowers last week. It's kind of weird to say it because Baltimore is considered the favorite here at home, probably getting some home field advantage points, but it does feel like you're trying to target in scenarios and ways this is the shootout, or maybe they're coming from behind in this one. So I do like the Flowers spot. I think that this game in general is one that you should be looking at for cash. I do think that this is one of the closest ones to being a shootout that scores and goes over the total, which I know is not a super strong total, but is still something where if it gets over 42.5 points, I think there's a pretty good chance that some of these guys are in the optimal plays. So I do like Flowers. I think he's too cheap on both sites. I don't mind Andrews. I think he's probably third or fourth on my tight end list. Lamar is definitely a guy that I could see be in a spot where he could be owned at quarterback this week, maybe more on FanDuel than anything. He has been, despite Tucker hitting 5 field goals plus, I mean, you see that he's been able to actually be a little bit more efficient. Last week, only 1 turnover. That has been a huge problem for him so far this season. He's lost, I don't know if this is lost fumbles or just fumbles in general, but he has 7 fumbles this year and 3 picks.
Jeez.
So not great, but the rushing numbers have looked better for him. And he was able to do that against the Tennessee defense that was pretty stingy against the run. So I do think that in this spot where if Baltimore is expecting to win, I don't think they can do it with the running back group that they have right now. So they're going to have to get through the air, and Lamar's going to have to be pretty close to MVP Lamar to be able to win this one. So I don't mind him for quarterback on a weird week for the position because you have so many of the elite guys in primetime spots. So I don't mind Lamar for quarterback and Flowers, and that's kind of it for me.
Watch out for a guy like Keaton Mitchell to start getting touches in that Baltimore room. Only reason I mention it is because he's an ECU guy, and I think he's actually really talented, and he's got some really incredible speed. So if they're looking for a change up at the running back room, which they definitely could be, Keaton Mitchell could be that guy. Definitely not the week to do it this week, though. Yeah, I think we're all set and done on this Baltimore team. Anything else that you have here?
I don't have anything else, I don't think. Yeah, no,
Okay.
we're good.
All right, let's move on to props. Like we said, the Zay Flowers number is one that's interesting. The 56.5, I think that's pretty solid. Um, what else are you looking for here in terms of numbers for the Ravens or even some Lions numbers?
I don't really love anything here. I think I could get behind some Lamar total yard numbers. A rushing receiving touchdown could potentially be interesting, but I think I'm okay with staying away. Maybe an under on Gus Edwards rushing yards too, but nothing stands out to me.
1.5 pass rush receiving, man, for Lamar. That seems a little bit too low, touchdown wise. That seems a little too
Yeah,
low to give him all three of the categories. Like I understand passing touchdowns over 1.5, but pass rush and receiving, that's a lot, man. I could get behind it. I also really like Andrews 53.5 or 56.5. I don't remember what I saw, but I like Andrews over receiving yards. I think he's in a really good spot this week. But that is it for me here. Let's move on if you're ready to move on.
yep, we can move on.
All right, next game up is the Bills facing off against the Patriots. Currently, Bills 9-point favorites. Over unders at 40 in this one. This one is being played in New England. Another QB injury that we have to talk through. Josh Allen, right shoulder injury, limited in walkthroughs on Wednesday. Will be interesting to see what his practice report might look like today. I don't know. Are you? Is this a really even that much of an exciting spot? Is this a spend up quarterback that you're looking at, or are you looking at someone on the later slate?
I think he is fine. I don't like it. I think he is just okay. I would say for starters, I mean, did not look good against the Giants. Maybe that was to be expected coming home from a London game on short rest. I am not 100% sure that I would say, like, I think that his rushing floor is still there, but definitely has not been a thing the last 3 weeks. I know he's scored on 2 of those games, and that's definitely been reasons why that he has had such incredible weeks in week 5 and or yeah, 4 and 5. So he's fine. I think he's a tournament play, and that's kind of it. I think that you obviously he would be great leverage off of Mahomes and Herbert in the late game. I think I would take Lamar personally, straight up over Josh Allen. That's probably contrarian a little bit, but I don't know. Maybe you can say New England's defense is just shot now, and you can just do whatever you want against them. I could believe that as well. But it's clear that, I mean, Allen Diggs stacks are going to be pretty low owned. As far as the Allen side goes, I think Diggs actually might garner some ownership as the week progresses. But other than that, I mean, I think this is just another really gross 1 p.m. game. And, maybe Buffalo is the team that gets the ownership because of the team total and the environment that they're in. And so, like being 9-point favorites on the road. I don't know. I worry about getting any, like New England having any ability to push back here. And so that's
Yeah.
going to be my limit. And that's where I think that Lamar has one of the better ceilings because I do think Detroit pushes them.
Yeah, for sure. I can get behind that. I could very much see this being similar to the Commanders game where the Washington Commanders gave no pushback to this Bills team. We saw them steamroll, and even though Josh Allen had a decent performance, 22 FanDuel points is not necessarily what you're looking for at that 9K price tag. So, fine with staying away from this spot in terms of the wide receivers in Allen. Well, I guess Diggs is definitely solid for sure. He'd be the only wide receiver that I would look at. Any running backs that you like here? We know that Damian Harris most likely not going to play this week.
Yeah.
We really are seeing things turn over to Latavius Murray, which is a crazy statement. But like he's getting a bigger chunk of the rushing yards, he's getting a bigger chunk of the carries. I think Latavius Murray is going to be the guy that ends up working in on passing downs because it seems like they're starting to gear away from James Cook all of a sudden. I don't know. This running back room is very, very confusing, like a Bills running back room always is.
Yeah, I mean the Patriots are not going to be a great run defense. They're going to continue to slide down the rankings here after losing two of their more important guys on the defensive side. I think that they're down like 5 defensive starters now in total, and
Tough.
so that's only going to get worse. I could see us potentially looking at this as teams get to play the Patriots. I don't think I'll be doing it this week. James Cook has been just so incredibly inefficient in the run game. I know he had a solid week last week, but nothing spectacular. And that just seems to be the trend of things this season. Nothing spectacular. Maybe if Allen, maybe the shoulder has him run less. I'm not sure. It is his throwing shoulder, too. So that's something to keep an eye on. Rarely does he miss games, so I don't expect that. But I could see them trying to rely on the run a little bit more. In that case, though, I just don't have any interest. Maybe Latavius Murray can rival some guys who could be starters in RB1s in that LA room, that Chicago room. But I'm not interested in cash for Buffalo outside of Diggs. And even then, I think I would take a Travis Kelce, a Keenan Allen, or some guys like that. So, or even, obviously Cooper Kupp's going to be a guy that we talk about later on today. So I find myself not interested in a lot of Bills stuff.
Yeah, can't blame you. I think it's tough to get behind this Bills team this week, and I think I'm perfectly fine with staying away from it. On the Patriots side, anything you're interested in this week? I mean, Kendrick Bourne had 11 targets last week. I think that's fine. I don't know. I like you said, like if this New England team could give no pushback here, and I wouldn't be shocked.
We were just talking about it in our employee chat, but we were kind of all wrong about Ramondre Stevenson so far this year. I don't know if that's because of the offensive line or because of the quarterback play or just the way that they're running the offense. 2 touchdowns on the year, but the touch count has been pretty strong. It's still not what it was last year. He's dealing with an ankle injury right now. Zeke is definitely, I don't know, not really even cutting into it that much necessarily, but just enough. I'm probably just off of a lot of this. I would look to see if Hunter Henry is good to go or not. You're going to see that the Buffalo defense is going to get worse against the tight end position as the season goes along. Matt Milano is not playing for them at this moment anymore, and Juju Smith-Schuster has a concussion. Demario Douglas has a concussion as well. And I don't know. I just think that this is a spot. I hate relying on Kendrick Bourne or Devontae Parker actual target counts, and I think that that's probably where I'll stay away. But would be interested to see if Hunter Henry is good to go or not. Maybe we get some Mike Gesicki here.
Yeah, for sure. Don't be shocked if Mac Jones ends up struggling if they end up putting in Malik Cunningham. I know it's kind of been talked about here, but
Yeah, this is
um,
the last week. This is it.
You say that they're just gonna. I think they just keep riding, man. I think they're at the point where
Well,
they're
I
hoping
think
for Caleb Williams.
sure. I think the sentiment last week was that we're going to roll with him. But then I saw something either this week or late last week where it was shaky at best in terms of allowing him to go. I don't know. I mean, he's looked completely dreadful 3 weeks in a row now.
I mean, I've heard Bill Belichick's job is on the line at this point, which is a crazy thing to think
I
about. I
don't
mean,
think so. I don't.
I don't know. That's there's been the rumors out there, so it'll certainly be interesting to see what happens with this team. But I don't expect them to give much of a fight here against Buffalo. So we'll have to see what happens when that game comes along. I think from a pick'em perspective, I'm completely off of everything. But if you have anything to share here, go for it.
I'm out. This game sucks. This whole window sucks. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
kind of what we
post,
deal
man.
with. We have to talk about it, but
I feel
the
like I'm
whole window
dragging through
sucks.
this window. I just want to get to the 4 p.m.
If you
window.
want to take a nap on Sunday morning after you lock your stuff, you can do that and sleep through this
It's the
game.
first week where it feels very, very possible to do so. All right, last game of the 1 p.m. window. Thank goodness. It is the Commanders facing off against the Giants here. Currently, Commanders come in as 2.5 point favorites on the road. Over under is at 37.5. Let's talk about this Commanders team first. I think that's one of their best weeks of football they've played so far this season against Atlanta. We saw Sam Howell be really accurate with the football. Not a lot of passing yards, but 3 touchdowns is definitely a good week. We saw the running game look really good. We saw the defense look pretty talented at times. I think there was a lot of positives last week's Atlanta game, and they broke Atlanta's home winning streak, which is kind of crazy. They've been winning at home a ton, so to go in there, face off against a pretty good Atlanta team, and get the win was pretty impressive. Now they get a Giants team that just was able to hold the Bills to a pretty respectable total, and I don't know, man. This could be interesting. This could be. I think there's a chance that the Commanders both show them too. But like, what do you think of this Commanders offense, and what are you interested in targeting against the Giants?
I don't like a lot. I'll start there. I think that you can make cases for them in tournaments. Brian Robinson being one of those candidates. I know that game script has not gone his way many a time this season, and dating back to what seems to be just Denver, uh, that things that haven't really gone their way in terms of just giving the rock to him and hoping for good results. I think that I would start there, and I think that you can also take a look at Terry McLaurin. Uh, Again, I think that they went out of their way to kind of correct what I thought were big mistakes against Chicago, and that's one of the reasons that they got destroyed in that game. It's poor game plan. Definitely went exactly the opposite. They stopped targeting Logan Thomas, and they just flipped all of that back to Terry. I think he is fine in the mid range this week, but it's just weird price points on all these guys, and so I think it's all right. Really sad about. Did you see Jahan Dotson and why he made the news this morning on Twitter?
No, what happened? I missed it.
Not an injury. It's just probably even worse for his fantasy outlook. But he is practicing with the field goal team in holding. He's the holder,
No, why?
practicing being the holder. Yeah. So
Why? What's going on?
yeah.
Jesus, never. Ron Rivera always working his magic,
Yep. 5 targets against Chicago. 1 target last week against Atlanta.
dude.
Pitiful, pitiful. And they're
It
trusting
looks
Curtis
so
Samuel.
good. It
Yeah.
looks so good to start the season, and I don't know where we. I mean, not like great or anything, but like he was getting the targets that made it feel good, and to see it fall off like this is to trust Curtis Samuel over Jahan Dotson is so ridiculous,
Yep.
so disappointing.
It's ridiculous, but they are just they're getting by and they're winning football games. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
I
It just
guess.
is what it is.
I
So
guess.
yeah, I know. There's nothing to love here necessarily. If you want to take stabs at some things, again, like I said, Brian Robinson's okay. The Giants are giving up a top 10 number in terms of fantasy points. They're towards that 8-9 range in most fantasy points to opposing running backs. That is something that I think is okay. I think Washington wins this game, and I think that it's just going to be a really gross NFC East type of situation. So have 1 or 2 hot takes on it. Commanders will win, but my hot takes aren't on that team.
Yeah, let's talk about this other side. Let's talk about the Giants, which I think is a little bit more interesting, surprisingly, to talk about in terms of DFS this week. Um, don't know if Daniel Jones is going to be back or not. Currently limited on Wednesday with that neck injury. I feel like because it's a neck injury, though, like the limited, he needs to have a full go before the game this week. Like he can't limited 3 times Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday,
Yeah.
and then end up playing because of it being a neck injury and it being a little bit more serious. So we'll have to see what happens there. But if he doesn't give it a full go, I would expect Tyrod Taylor to take back over this. I don't think Tyrod Taylor's a bad option either for this team. I mean,
Yeah.
he had a really good week last week, as good as you can against a sound defense in Buffalo. Um, I think the main thing that I want to get exposure to is this receiving game. I'm going to be very interested to see if Wan'Dale Robinson ends up practicing today or hopefully practicing Friday, because I think if he does, he's a really, really good option as value. And even if he's not, I think you can find another wide receiver that you could like a lot this week because, we've said it and we're going to keep saying it. I think wide receiver ones against this Commanders team is one of the more dependable options right now in the league. We saw them give it up
Yep.
against London. We've seen him give it up against DJ Moore. Every wide receiver one they faced off against to start out the season has been able to put up massive numbers. And I think that continues. I don't see any reason why it would stop. They're not fixing anything back there. So I want to get a wide receiver here at some point. It's just a question of who, and that all depends on if Wandale ends up playing or not.
Yeah, last week was the true test for if that theory worked. And considering London had 140 yards in the air, I think that that worked.
I think he had
Um,
175, dude. I think it
did
was
he?
more than
Yeah,
100.
I was something
Yeah,
over 120.
it was a
So,
massive. I'll double check here real quick. Give me a second. Not 175, 125, but still a massive week, right? 9 for 12 as well in terms of targets and receptions.
yep. So, one receiving group has failed to do this, and that was Cardinals week one. Other than that, they have been decimated by opposing wide receivers. The problem is we don't know who the wide receiver one is in the Giants system. It could be Waller, it could
Yeah,
be
yeah.
Slayton, it could be Wandale Robinson, it could be Barkley. I mean,
Could
who
be Darren
knows? But
Waller.
exactly. So it's one of those things where I'm not so sure what to do with it. All I know is that I want to try to do something with it. So what we do have news though, it just came in 30 seconds ago, and it's pretty clear that I think that this is coach speak for Daniel Jones not playing. He has not been cleared for contact, but he's going to be limited in practice today. He's not cleared for contact on Thursday for a football game. You're not playing.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, he's got to. It's going to be Tyrod Taylor this week, which is just fine. Like I said, Taylor had a relatively good week last week, where I feel confident in his QB skills. So, um, it's just all going to be about if Wandale plays or not. If Wandale plays, then I think Wandale's your wide receiver one, and you roll with it. If he doesn't play, think you're just throwing a whole bunch of darts and hoping one sticks. I mean, all
Yeah.
these guys are relatively cheap, so like make multiple lineups like we do with with our GPP page on the website, and end up taking a whole bunch of them and repick them stuff. I think you're just shit out of luck, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you. I'm actually somewhat interested in Saquon here too, as a guy that could be a difference maker in GPPs. You have Eckler on this slate. You have Bijan. You have Kenneth Walker. All in general areas around here. I think that Saquon will be a guy that no one clicks on because of the ankle, because of the team, because of the game environment. Just missed a really fantastic day on DK, getting 7 yards short of the bonus, and if he gets in the end zone once or twice, you can have a really really good day. So I think Saquon is interesting. I think that the wide receiver group, if you get one of them right, could be a really boomer bust type of situation. Uh, I don't think you can play Giants and cash on FanDuel unless we know some more information. But on DraftKings, the Robinson spot does help if he ends up giving it a full go.
Barkley has had a touchdown 3 out of the 5 times he's played this Washington uh, Commanders team. Last year when he played them, he had a touchdown in both of the matchups. Pretty good numbers overall. 87 rushing yards, 63 rushing yards, around 30 receiving yards in both games. Yeah, I could definitely get behind the Saquon stuff. It's a little bit high priced, but I think I still can get behind it.
Yeah, I mean, at that point for tournaments, you're just looking for him to outscore Josh Jacobs, which is probably tough. But at the same time, Barkley is a guy that can do that.
I will also say Terry has lit up this Giants team in the past. 6 for 6 for 70, 8 for 12 for 105 and a touchdown, 6 for 6 for 93, 11 for 14 for 107 and a touchdown, and 7 for 9 for 86. Those are his last 5 games. Those are some pretty big numbers. So maybe you can entice me on some Terry stuff. I don't think it's a bad option to go to.
Final thing here. This is something that I'm just going to keep doing, and it's going to be relevant again this week, especially on FanDuel. The Giants defense, I'm just looking for any defense against Washington. Sam Howell still giving up the most sacks out of anybody in the NFL. And I know that Atlanta really disappointed us last week, but they still got 5 sacks on Sam Howell. And so if this Giants team, I know they haven't been able to do anything on the defensive end as well, but I'll take a second to actually feel bad for them because their schedule has been completely awful so far to
Yeah.
start the year. Dallas, San Francisco, Seattle, Miami, Buffalo. You look at that, it's probably 5 of the 6 top offenses in the NFL.
They're
Arizona, weird game. So
yeah.
they
I
have
can
gone through the
almost
ringer.
unless Kansas City ends up winning the Super Bowl, they've faced like almost every Super Bowl. They faced almost every Super Bowl contender this season, like
Yeah.
San Fran, Miami, Buffalo, Dallas. Like this is a tough path to go through. I'm sure the schedule gets a lot easier coming up here. All right, let's move over to pick'em stuff. I think I'd be really interested in seeing a Terry number now. It's not up, but
I
him
got
and
one.
Curtis Samuel have half a rushing and receiving touchdown. I could get behind that combo number. I actually think that's really sound and looks pretty solid overall. Um, what are you interested in terms of this commander side?
There's not much to see just because of the injuries for the other side. So we have Terry McLaurin at 58.5 receiving. I like that. I still think Brian Robinson's a solid play. It's not good, it's not great, but it's solid. 61.5 rushing yards. You would need, again, like this is hinging on having a positive game script and him getting 15 rushing attempts. So
Mm-hmm.
if you think that that's the way that this leans, and I would tend to agree, I think Washington probably can close at 3.5 points now, knowing that Tyrod Taylor is in a quarterback, or we should know this soon. So I don't mind the outlook for Robinson there. I think it gets better with that news.
Yeah, I certainly agree, and I can get behind that. All right, anything else here? If not, Jared, let's move on into the next game.
No,
Finally, into the 4 p.m. window.
let's get game totals over 40, please.
Yes, thank you. Please. First one up, a healthy total finally. It's crazy to say that about 44 and a half. Last week we would have been digging a 44 and a half total. This week we're very thankful for it. Steelers facing off against the Rams, 3-point favorites. Like I mentioned, Rams are 3-point favorites. Like I mentioned, 44 and a half total. Let's start off with this Steelers side. They're coming off of a bye this week, right? I'm not crazy thinking
Yes.
that. Yeah, so coming off of the bye, hopefully fixes some of the OC problems and some of the coaching problems that we were having with the offense. But you have to go up against a Rams defense that I wouldn't say is the best, but definitely looks pretty sound overall and isn't a bad defense by any stretch of the imagination. What are you thinking here for this Steelers team? And let's just start out with Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to go out of my way necessarily to play any Steelers this week. Like you said, the Rams defense has been solid. They have been involved in some shootouts, which is going to inflate some numbers. But all in all, it's a pretty stingy defense, and that's saying a lot considering that they had like one of the youngest teams in the NFL, if not the youngest. So they definitely have a bright future, all things considered here. So if you want to look somewhere, there are 2 guys coming back, hopefully, for Pittsburgh this week. One of them being Pat Fryermuth, who had a concussion bye week. He's good. And then Deontay Johnson is coming off the IR. He practiced in full yesterday. So those guys should be back, should raise the floor of Pickett, should raise the floor of the offense. Pat Fryermuth would be the guy that I would play from a scheme position. The Rams are giving up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. And we know Kenny Pickett likes to throw there. Fryermuth's definitely been a disappointment so far, and the concussion didn't help. So I don't know. That would be where I would go with it. I am not touching the running backs.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Not touching the running backs. Definitely interested in some of the other stuff though that you talked about in terms of Freiermuth coming back, especially against the Rams defense that hasn't really put it together against tight ends and I could definitely get interested in potentially a Deontay Johnson or something. Anything else here? If not, let's move over to the other side.
Do we even dare mention the Allen Robinson revenge spot?
Uh, Probably not with Deontay Johnson coming back. I mean, if we can mention it, doesn't mean we have
I
to
know.
play it.
I just think that the Rams, like this could be a really, really gross game where the Rams just dominate here, or it could. I don't know. I think that there's potential sneaky shootout upside for every game of this window. That won't be contrarian, but this one is one where I could see it outperform expectations in being something that actually puts up points.
Yeah, for sure. I can get behind it. All right, let's talk about this Ram side, which gets pretty enticing overall, I think. You have Cooper Cup in a really good spot where we've seen wide receivers just absolutely burn this Steelers team, one of the worst teams against wide receivers in the NFL, in terms of their fourth worst overall. We saw Cooper Cup get really involved last week against Arizona. Kind of got played out at the end because of a blowout, but I think Cup could potentially be a full go for 4 quarters here, and if he is, this could be a monster performance for him. It could be a monster performance for Puka Nakua as well. Like, I think you have some really high upside with what this Rams team brings to the table in terms of the passing game. And we'll talk about the running back room in just a second. But I think Ronnie Rivers and Kyron Williams being out means that it's a lot of short routes to Cooper Cup, which are kind of like a different take on the run game, essentially. Like I've talked
Yeah,
about this on other stuff, but like it's essentially the run game, but still throwing the ball.
that's kind of how I feel that the Rams will approach this. We talked, and again, like I can't understate how incredible the Kieran Williams stuff was last week. The guy had almost negative rushing yards. He had like a half a fantasy point in the first half last week,
Looked real
and then
bad.
ended up going 150 yards and a score in the second half alone. We've been able to have running backs do well against Pittsburgh this season. Maybe that gets improved with Cam Hayward status here with the bye week coming back. I'm not sure necessarily, but I do know that I agree with you. We'll talk about the running back room second, but I do think the Rams operate in a spot where they're just going to use their wide receivers to essentially move the chains for them. And they're going to do that in a variety of ways. And you have two elite receiving weapons and the ability to scheme those guys open. So I think that Cooper Cup, we have not talked about a smash play outside of Josh Jacobs. Cooper Cup's the smash play. And there's really
Yeah.
nothing. He's the best play on the slate.
I will also say, like, these running back numbers feel a little inflated. Like, they faced off against the Steelers defense has faced off against San Francisco and CMC, faced off against Nick Chubb when he was healthy, faced off against Josh Jacobs, faced off against Houston, which doesn't really pose that much of a threat, but then faced off against Baltimore. And in that Baltimore game, they got I think the running game did pretty well. So I don't know. I don't know if I can necessarily trust this running back room, but really like the wide receivers. Let's talk about the running back room really quickly because Zach Evans is going to be the lead guy. At least that's what we're expecting here with Kyron and Ronnie Rivers both out for a while here. I think there's a chance that Royce Freeman really works into things. I think there's a chance that I feel like they have another name here. It's not showing up in the player pool, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but there could definitely be another guy in the mix as well. I'm not sure how to approach this running back situation, but Zach Evans is an RB1 at 4,800. Is it just too much to pass up there at such a cheap price tag?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're obviously gonna bring somebody up from the practice squad here to make a 3 running back group. And I think at the end of the day, we know what Royce Freeman is. He is not a lead back. I would say at this point, Sean McVay is very untrustworthy of a coach speak guy. But and shout out, there's a Twitter handle that's like coach speak something. I'll have to figure it out and post it in the Discord because
Mm-hmm.
they say that his consistency and his coach speak is not that reliable, but his depth chart is. So right now,
Yeah.
he's the RB1 and Zach Evans is. And so we know he's also a guy coming out of college at Ole Miss, has a good track record. I really liked nothing super off the charts. His speed is a little bit above average, but the playmaking and the physicalness does match what I think he probably is better than Kieran Williams just at a glance. But at the same time, I'm not necessarily sure how much to trust it. But what I do want to find out, and this is what is so important over the next 24 to 36 hours, is do we get any sort of news about any of this? Or do we just go in blind and say, hey, we're just playing this guy because he's min price, essentially, and he's going to get
Yeah.
10 to 15 touches in a game where they should have established opportunities to score. So, I mean, even if he doesn't score, I think that he is a candidate to hit value.
I mean, what does he need to do? Don't talk about numbers, fantasy point wise. In terms of a rushing yards line, what does he need to do for you to feel
Oh,
good about a play at 4,800?
he could still fail. Like
Yeah.
there are pathways to him still failing. I think anything under 50 rushing yards is probably a bust if he doesn't score.
Yeah, for sure. I can get behind that. And I don't know. I mean, like scoring will definitely be an option for him, but like it's a close game. I know the Rams are at home, which makes it a little bit more favorable, but it's only a 3-point spread. Like I don't think they're good. I don't think it's like last week against the Cardinals where they're up like 26-3 and they're just able to give Evans the ball a whole bunch of times. I bet a lot of those red zone stuff will be kind of coordinated towards Puka and Cooper Cup. So um yeah, it definitely will be interesting to see what Zach Evans does, but definitely a very advantageous price tag. By the way, that other name, Miles Gaskin, he's the other guy that the Rams are going to bring
Oh,
up from the practice
well, I
squad.
feel much better about Zach Evans then.
Yeah, Miles Gaskin and Royce Freeman as the backups doesn't seem like
I
they're going to
mean,
get a whole lot of
those are
work.
two journeyman RB2s, right? Like
Yeah.
RB3s. Sometimes they don't even make squads. So I think that they'll try to give Evans some work here. It could go very poorly. Like I said, I mean, I posted on Twitter yesterday. This is Zach Evans, and here are his price tags. I did not have a lean. I guess if I had a lean today, it would be we're playing him because he's projected to be the RB1 in a Rams offense, and that historically under McVay has been something that has been great for fantasy. Obviously, I think that the RB1 is Cup, but I mean, you're playing him anyway. So I do think that you're trying to play two Rams this week, and I think that that's probably the way I'll go for cash.
Hey, you say the RB1 in the Rams offense is usually good? Tell that to Cam Akers.
He was
That's all I
great.
have to.
He
He
was
he
great.
was great. He was great until this year. All right, I think we're done here. Anything else you want to mention about the Rams? If not, let's move into pick'em stuff and talk about some stuff we like because I think this board is pretty solid for this Rams team at the very least.
Yeah, tough matchup for Higbee. I'll probably be off here. He's seen his targets decrease over the last 2 weeks. Since Cup has come back, I'm probably off of that spot until further notice. Puka Nakua is still I would say he's a strong cash play. I know that he's been not as efficient. Did well in the Eagles matchup, not so great last week. But I think that as his price comes down, potentially, we can start to look at this as a Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle type of situation. I know we don't play Waddle very much, but you'd have to wait for the price tag to get to a point where you can play it. Could make some sense on FanDuel if you don't want to go Cup's way, but I think that you're just paying the 9,700 on FanDuel to get the Cup and 95 on DK.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing about Evans this week is that like he opens up so much for you can play Cooper Cup,
You're
you can
playing
play.
Evans because it opens up Cup in the same
Yeah,
team.
it opens up Cup, it opens up Jacobs, it opens up your ability to do a lot this week. So I think that's the biggest advantageous spot of Zach Evans is not necessarily in game planned into things, but what he provides for the rest of your build. All right, I think we're done here. Let's talk about pick'em stuff. I first thing I saw off the jump was Cup at 90.5 receiving yards. I know the number's high, but he's covered it the past 2 weeks. I think he gets there. I think the number I like more is a pass rush receiving touchdown. Again with them not relying on Evans more in the red zone, in my opinion, I think Cup is like if they get down there, I think he's going to be targeted a few times come
Sure.
end zone.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously scored last week, but, I think this is a week where the Rams you really have to, and I think that we are both leaning this way, but you really just have to hope that Pittsburgh comes out motivated and is able to push this Rams team. That's what you would need.
Yeah,
I think that Cup can still get there with value if this game stays close, or if this game doesn't stay close. But if the game stays close, it's a monster spot for him. So, uh, yeah, I mean, if he doesn't score on FanDuel, I worry about it a little bit, but at the same time, I think that most people will end up going here.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Anything else in this game, Jared? If not, let's move on to another fun 4 p.m. game.
No, we're good here on this side.
All right, next game up is going to be the Cardinals facing off against the Seahawks. Over-unders at 44.5. I like this game, I think, more than maybe the public does. I think there's advantageous stuff to both sides, but let's start off with Arizona. Saw them kind of disappoint last week against the Rams. I think everyone was expecting a little bit more from this team overall. I think we're kind of finally getting off of our Josh Dobbs high, and he's playing more at his level rather than what he was doing way earlier on in the season. Um, what do we think about Dobbs facing off against a Seattle team that has been horrific against wide receivers? I think it's Marquise Brown week, man.
Yeah.
I think he's going to continue to get 10 plus targets. I think there's more catches coming his way, and I think it's Marquise Brown week.
Yeah, Marquise Brown's what you want on this side of the ball. I'm not touching Dobbs necessarily. I'm not touching the running back group, which, by the way, we were right on that front last week. I think it's just, and then, even Trey McBride's getting more targets than Zach Ertz now. So it is truly Marquise Brown or bust. And could see them potentially continue to pepper that because he could be a trade candidate coming up soon. So there's definitely, but the way you beat the Seahawks defense is through the air. I know it didn't necessarily pan out last week with the Bengals and Jamar Chase, but you definitely go back to the well here and you make that work. I think Marquise Brown is a fantastic option to save you some money. He's 5,300 on DraftKings. Makes a lot of sense on that format. 6,700 I think is still strong, but is a couple hundred above what I would love to play for FanDuel.
For sure. Yeah. I can get behind the Marquise Brown stuff. Outside of that, I really don't have much interest. You can take shots on Michael Wilson and Rondale Moore, but you're just hoping to get lucky with a long bomb to one of them. And I don't know. It's just luck at that point.
Yep.
I don't think there's anything else here, though. I'm not touching the running back group, and I'm staying away from Dobbs. I think it's pretty easy on this side. And on the other side, I think it's equally as easy. You're just playing Kenneth Walker. I think the touches look really good right now. I think when they have a lead, they lean on him. Zach Charbonnet having this hamstring injury and did not practice in Wednesday's practice leaves them very limited in terms of like kind of splitting up Walker's touches. And so if he's going to have 20 carries or 20 touches in this game, I think it's as easy as that. Just play him against one of the worst run defenses in football in Arizona.
Yep. Home favorite with a really strong team total. They have a team total of 27.5, and the only team that has anything close to that is the Chiefs on this slate. So you got to feel pretty good about that. Coming in here, yeah, it is a Kenneth Walker week, and this is where things get very interesting because on FanDuel he's 8,800. On DraftKings, he's definitely in a spot where I think we'd be a little bit more enticed here, where he comes in at 7K. I think I'd be more interested there. The problem with this is like you got to probably fade one of Gibbs, Pacheco, Jacobs, or Kenneth Walker, and that's a tough thing to do, tough pill to swallow. So that's why I could see maybe like I think that there are still ways that you could potentially maybe not have to play Zach Evans, but we'll talk about that as we go along here. It does kind of hinge on what you want to do with the Chiefs in that game. So Kenneth Walker makes a really enticing conversation of like, who are you fading of the top running backs on the board? And you kind of have to stick to your gut there. We'll talk about more of those running backs again, like I said, in the last 3 games. But yeah, the Walker spot's amazing. Maybe this is a spot where you're taking a stand and pick them and going really strong and heavy on those numbers. But yeah, I mean, the spot doesn't get much better. Again, like we saw last week, Karen Williams was able to go 150 and 1.5 against them. So imagine Walker getting like 25 carries in this spot, and I think it's a gold mine.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's that simple though, right? We're not touching wide receivers from this Seattle team. We're staying away from everything else except for Kenneth Walker.
Well, they're both hurt, so if one sits, then you're obviously the answer changes. Too early in the week to know that right now. I think Geno Smith actually is an interesting play in cash if we find out that you don't want to go the Walker way. But I wouldn't play with both of them in that regard. Geno Smith to somebody from this Seattle team could be a GPP winner as well in case those touchdowns go that direction. Arizona, obviously been much worse to running backs, but they still are a bottom 6 defense to wide receivers as well. So I don't mind any of that. It's just kind of tough to find out who's going to. You need to get it right, obviously, and that's probably just the better options going with the Walker spot. But it is very easy to get Walker on one side and Marquise Brown on the other side. You won't be any different making tournament lineups like that.
Yeah, that's definitely the easy way to go about it. I think if either one of these guys sit in Metcalf or in Lockett, which I don't think either one sits. We saw
Nah,
Lockett
probably not.
limited yesterday. I know DK had this rib injury. He did not practice yesterday, but he played with it on Sunday because he got it in Sunday's game and then
Right.
came back from the locker room. So I think most likely both of them play. If either one of them don't play, though, very interested in Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think we saw the post rookie bump a little bit
Yeah,
last week, and I think
sure.
you're going to continue to see it as the weeks go on. So, good week for him. Good week for Jake Bobo as well. He had a really incredible catch. I don't know if you got to see it in the 1 p.m. window last week against Cincinnati, but he looked like a stud out there. So don't be shocked if they give him a few more targets.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I don't know what to believe necessarily with the second tier wide receivers for Seattle because DK Metcalf did leave the game and come back, so maybe it was in that time that those
The Jake
guys.
Bobo catch was in the time that
Yeah,
DK Metcalf left.
so I don't know, but we'll get more clarity as the week goes on. Like I said, Seattle has a top team total on the slate, so you have to be interested in something here.
Yep, without a doubt. All right, let's move over to pick'em stuff. Like you mentioned, it's really easy just to be very bullish on Kenneth Walker this week.
Uh-huh.
76 and a half rushing yards,
Love it.
half a touchdown. I love a half a touchdown. I'm
Yeah.
so in on that half a touchdown number. I'm in on the 76 and a half rushing yards. Anything I can get with Kenneth Walker, I'm going to take advantage of this week, I think.
Yep, I have no qualms about any of that. I think this is a 100 plus rushing yard game for him, and sitting at anything under 80 is a smash.
For sure. All right. Let's talk about the other side. What do we like for this Cardinals team in terms of props? Any interest in a Marquise Brown number, which is currently at 56 and a half?
Yeah, you like the Marquise Brown stuff. I think that that's fine. If anything, I mean, and I know it's early, but if we got anything with targets, I would be interested in that. If it's
Yep.
like 8, 7.5, 8, I would go over
Yep.
on that. He's a double digit target guy in this offense, and I think that they'll be playing from behind. I do slightly worry, at least a little bit, about the weather in this game. It does feel like we're going to get some rain showers, but I don't think that. I mean, Seattle, it rains every day, so I don't think that that is a huge deal, but it could slightly impact some things.
Yeah, I think if I'm attacking that Marquise Brown number, I'm looking for a target number. I'm looking for that number at 8, even at 9. As long as it's not up at 10, I'm fine with taking it. I think anything below double digits for Marquise Brown targets is a-okay with me. All right. Anything else in this game, Jared? If not, let's get to the key matchup of the week. I think everyone's getting really excited about.
Uh, I mean, I think that the last thing that I might want to mention here is that I don't mind a team total over. I know that's a lot to ask for at 27.5, but I do think Seattle has a chance to put up a good 30 points here on this team.
Only thing I worry about is that if it gets out of hand, they're so willing to just like ground and pound you when it gets
Sure,
out of hand.
sure.
I think you could lose a lot of clock there and lose a lot of scoring opportunities. But that is just in my. I feel like you need some pushback if you're going to get over 27 and a half from Arizona. And again, similar to what we talked about with some other teams, I'm not sure if Arizona gives that pushback this week.
Fair enough.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about this next game. This is the fun one. This is the one that I think a lot of people are excited for. Chargers and Chiefs facing off against each other. Chiefs at home in Arrowhead, -5.5 for the Chiefs. Over under is at 48. Man, I could see this going under. I know a lot of people are hyping this up, but like I think this is it could lead to a lot of disappointment, man. I mean, maybe the Chiefs fix their red zone stuff this week, but I don't know if you listen to New Heights. I know I'm pretty sure you do listen to New Heights.
Yeah,
I don't know if you listen to it weekly and listen to this week's episode, but I ended up listening to this week's episode, and Travis kind of talked about how they have just been awful in the red zone. They have not been able to capitalize on opportunities whatsoever. they're able to move the ball really effectively. It's just once they get into this red zone offense, it's not good stuff. So things could certainly turn around this week. Chargers, worst team in football against the QB position when it comes to fantasy. Worst team in football against the wide receiver position. I think they're the second worst team. I think Denver's the worst team, but they're very bad in terms of all of the yards they give up to the wide receiver position. I guess my question is that, like, how much can you trust in a wide receiver here? And is it better just to maybe trust in Patrick Mahomes over everything else?
Yeah, that's kind of why I do like Mahomes a lot. I think that you can just get everything that you have in this offense through him.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about Pacheco here in a little bit. It is tough to stomach the fact that Patrick Mahomes 3 straight games under 20 fantasy points. That is probably a
Crazy time.
first, maybe in his
Yeah,
career. I'm not sure, um,
probably.
but at the same time, I mean, against three defenses that he should have been able to do that against. So I don't
Well,
know. I'm on the fence. I got to see a little bit more, but at the end of the day, I think that he does provide uh, some strong. Like I won't say your strongest floor. It's kind of why I like Lamar a little bit too, because I think that there's some pushback on that side in that
mm-hmm.
game. I think that quarterback is a very up in the air position this week, and you're going to have to just really trust in your gut to try to find plays that work. Mahomes is fine. He's a favorite in the best game environment on the slate at home, and his team total's high. So you like all that stuff. The way they've been getting touchdowns is something where it's a very Chiefs thing to do. So I'm not sure exactly how I feel about it. When's the last time they played on? It was Sunday afternoon, right? No, they
Yeah,
played on prime time last Thursday. So
yes.
a couple extra days to prep. I don't mind I mean, obviously, I think that they win Andy Reid with more preparation time, especially with the Chargers and that tough loss on Monday night. We'll talk about them, but I definitely feel like Mahomes and the Chiefs have a really good opportunity to bounce back and get things right now. It's just tough to roster it on a price structured format. This is so very heavily, especially on FanDuel, just you have the opportunity and everything in place to play Mahomes and Kelsey today, this weekend, and I don't know how interested I am in doing that. And that's kind of
Yeah.
a weird thing to say.
It is a weird thing to say. I think it is a solid spot for both of them, but yeah, it's definitely a little bit tough. I don't know. There's a lot of upside to the Mahomes spot. He typically just does really well against this Chargers team
Yeah,
too. Like I'll
yeah,
I'll list the last five: 329 passing yards, 3 touchdowns; 235 passing yards, 2 touchdowns; 410 passing yards, 3 touchdowns; 260, 3 touchdowns; and
yep,
302 and 2 touchdowns. So like he's been very successful against this Chargers team. This Chargers team looks awful when it comes to the passing defense. Um, I see a lot of upside here, man. I see a lot of
yeah.
upside.
Well, here's the thing that used to happen in the past. Travis Kelsey used to get locked up by Derwin James, and Tyreek Hill would go for 200 yards. And I
Yeah.
just don't know if that's necessarily in the plans. Um, maybe we're very bullish as a podcast on Rasheed Rice, and we've made that call. We were way ahead of the field on that for a couple weeks
Yes, you
now.
are.
Maybe he's the guy that steps forward here. I think Isaiah Pacheco is a really good option in this game as well. Man, it's tough. I say Mahomes is still a top 3 QB on this slate with the opportunity. We just saw what Dak was able to do, and we kind of dogged on him for not being the best QB through 5 weeks here, and
Hmm.
he was able to light up that team on Monday. So I don't
Yeah.
think much changes in that regard, and I think that given the fact that Mahomes has some more time, Travis Kelsey probably a little bit healthier now. Rasheed Rice gets a couple extra days. I know it's not a rookie by any means, but he looked really strong here. I would think even he's considerable for cash. I mean, not gonna lie, I think that he actually kind of carries some cash viability at 5,600 on FanDuel. Uh, so I don't know. Maybe you kind of have to just be bullish on Chiefs, and if you are, then you take stabs at them.
In the last five matchups for Kelsey against this team, I know the narrative has always been that Derwin kind of stops him, but Derwin doesn't really stop him. Like
Well,
he's had
Derwin's
more
been
than
hurt
90.
too. I know.
Yeah, I guess, but like he couldn't have been hurt for all these matchups. I
No,
don't know.
not
I'd have
all
to
of
go
them.
take it.
Not all of them.
I'd
Kelsey's
have
won
to
the
go take
battle
a look.
lately.
Yes, he certainly has. More than 90 yards in 4 out of these five matchups, more than 100 yards in 3 out of the 5 of these matchups, and he's had a touchdown in 3 out of 5.
Yep.
He's had 3 touchdowns in the meeting last year in November. So he has certainly put up big numbers here, and I think like yes, Rashee Rice is a very good option. I'm perfectly willing to go there, especially if you can't afford the Travis Kelce spot at tight end. Or if maybe you want to get exposure to Lamar and get Mark Andrews there instead, then I understand going Rashee Rice. But I think Kelce, like if you have the money,
Yeah.
he's a great spend up. He's a great spend up.
The way that I'm approaching this right now, and again, this can change. It is Thursday afternoon. Uh, you're playing Cup. You kind of can figure out what you want to do. I currently have Kenneth Walker out of my lineup on FanDuel, but I do have Kelce there. And I think that pound for pound, they can be pretty close to each other on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I think it is a little bit tougher to get to Kelce, where you can just play Luke Musgrave, who we'll talk about in the last game on the slate. So
Yeah.
Kelce, I think, is at a position on FanDuel where he can just absolutely smoke the rest of the position. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
that hasn't been that much of a conversation this year, whether it was because he missed a game, whether it's because the Chiefs have just been playing on prime time, because they've played 2 of their last 3 games on prime time, and we weren't sure what to expect with the Minnesota game for him as well. So you look at the last 2 weeks and you see everything that you want to see from Kelce. And I
Yeah,
think that he is just as strong of a candidate as Josh Jacobs, or I won't say Cup, but he's in that range as well, just a little bit below it.
for sure. All right. Anything else on this side? Do you want to expand any more on Pacheco
Yeah, we
before
should at
we move
least
on?
talk about it. He's not necessarily a huge play on FanDuel because of the price of 7,400, but on DraftKings he sits at 6,100, and that is where I think you have to try to find interest in him. It will be whether or not, because I think Jacobs against Chicago presents one of the greatest touch opportunities of the slate, and then I think right below him is Kenneth Walker at 7K, and if you take Walker with that team total in that environment at home against the Cardinals, I think the matchup is very close to the Pacheco one, but I think the role, and it's tough because I think that Pacheco, I try to stand up for Pacheco a lot, and I think the touch count is actually really strong at 20 plus, or getting
Yeah,
close to 20 as possible. But I also think that I probably would lean with Walker over Pacheco on DraftKings this week, and it's tough to say.
it's tough for sure. I like the Pacheco spot. Don't get me wrong. I do think I lean with Walker at the end of the day. But I think Pacheco is a great pivot. I wonder how
Yeah,
cash game owned or tournament owned he's going to be. Last year, same matchup, 15 rushing attempts, 107 yards against this Chargers team.
yeah. I mean the
Uh,
matchup's good. The problem is like if he does not get in the end zone, he is not hitting value.
Yeah, did not get in the end zone last year. I can tell you that. All right. Anything else here on this side? If not, let's talk about the Chargers because I think this is a tougher spot than people expect it to be.
Yeah, I think it's a tougher spot than last week or on Monday. I think it's
I
a
I just think at the end of the day, like this Chiefs defense is so good, man. I think it's the most like underrated defense in the NFL right now. I think overall they have a really complete group up to whether it be the front seven with Bolton and who's one of the best linebackers in the league right now, and Chris Jones who's been a monster this year, or
yep,
the secondary that's taken leaps and strides above
yep.
what it was last year with Trent McDuffie and all
Sneed
them.
is a very
Yes,
underrated corner.
yeah, they have a ton of good guys. So like this is what I was talking about is that like I'm not sure the Chargers end up giving you enough points to cover this total. I'm not sure if they end up competing enough to cover 5.5, man. Like, I think everyone sees Chargers, you see Herbert, you see Mahomes, and you think, like, oh, this game's going over 50 easily. I don't think that's the case this week. I don't think Herbert is going to have a lot of success here against this Chiefs defense, especially in Arrowhead. Like,
Yeah,
it could be really troublesome for this Chargers offense.
yeah. I mean, the negatives definitely pile up. You are coming off of a spot where you just played a close game and lost at home on prime time. You also played on Monday, and you have to travel. And I know that they've made this travel; they make it every year. But I think this one's definitely a tough back-to-back set for these Chargers. They get Austin Eckler back. That's a plus. I think that we expected him to not perform very well. I could see him doing better. But I do think that people just expect Keenan Allen to completely dominate. Not sure if I necessarily agree with that. I think that he's a fine play. I think DraftKings is where you'd want to play that, but at the same time, I could see things just adding up to where I find myself a little bit less enticed to make sure I just jam them in. Where I think you should be trying to jam in a Chiefs player, and hopefully that is Travis Kelce. Uh, but I could also see ways where you're just not playing anybody from the Chargers, and that I'd be okay with that. So I think in terms of opportunity and importance, I would say that I'd be more willing to say you have to have a Seattle player rather than a Chargers player.
100% agree with that. 100%. If you're 1v1ing Austin Eckler and Kenneth Walker, give me Kenneth Walker all week long. I think it's
Yeah,
a pretty clear lean towards Kenneth Walker and his upside. Austin Eckler also just hasn't done that well in this matchup in the past. Usually gets pretty stopped overall. So take that for what it's worth. I don't see many worlds where he pays off this 9,400. I just think he'd have to fall into the end zone twice to really
no,
pay it off for you.
they priced him up way too high. Um,
Yeah,
do we know? I guess we don't know. I was gonna say there's a lot to ask here, and it's probably way too late. Sounds like Frank Clark's gonna be on the Chiefs very soon. That's what it sounds like.
yes,
But I don't
yeah.
think he's
I
gonna
know
be
he had
ready
a
for
physical
this week.
yesterday. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be this week. I wonder if the McCole Hardman stuff is going to happen this week. I feel like I don't know. I just feel like because of the fact that he's been in this offense for a while before, that it wouldn't be that hard to integrate him back in.
But
Uh,
where is he on the? I don't know, man. I feel
I
like
don't know where he's on.
he's behind Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney.
Yeah, and I is he behind Marquez Valdez Scantling even? Like I don't know where he's going
Yeah,
to be at on this team.
yeah.
So it's a good point, but they use so many wide receivers that you could definitely factor into things. It's
Maybe
less though of like a
yeah. Tournaments,
less
it's
though.
like I think it's Rasheed or bust. Actually, no, I won't say bust. I think we played Kadarius Toney on Monday night or
Mhm.
whatever that was last Thursday.
Yeah,
I think that he and Rice are the only guys you can trust in that wide receiver room right now, and that's more to the point of like just play Kelce on this slate. You figure it out.
yeah, yeah, for sure, definitely. Let's move over to pick'em stuff. Let's talk about this for a little bit. I wonder if we're gonna have many Chiefs numbers. I know we have some Kelsey numbers. Oh yeah, we have a good chunk. You have Pacheco at 61 and a half rushing yards. I like that number. I like the over there. Could see Mahomes go over this passing yard number. Like I think you definitely have some solid numbers to start you out for this Chiefs team.
Kelce over receiving is nice. I think
Mm-hmm.
going for the touchdown is good. Um, Mahomes over 2 passing touchdowns is somewhat interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, Yeah, I don't think that they need to like again, I think that the Chiefs are taking somewhat of a different approach and it's something I haven't talked about to you yet, but it feels it's not the Chiefs situation is completely different, but we are so used to rostering guys and then they just figure it out. The Packers in the next game are a team that we've just done that and it's worked out, and we're just seeing two different things from two different teams, and I don't think people really feel comfortable with trusting some of what the Chiefs are doing, even though they are 5-1. So
Mm-hmm.
you just have to kind of it's going to be bumpy and they're going to figure it out, and you just kind of have to trust in the best pieces and you go from there. And I think the emerging pieces are something we can take a look at in other formats. I think Rice is pretty close to a cash game consideration depending on some more news we have, but again, this is why you just play Kelsey and you go from there. I wouldn't be jumping out of my chair to play anybody on the Kansas City Chiefs not named Kelsey in any of these pick'em formats.
I would agree with that. I can get behind that. How many Chiefs are too much in cash? That's the last question that I'll leave you with here
You
before we
shouldn't
move
be
on.
playing more than two. So
Okay.
if you want to go Mahomes, Kelsey, honestly, I think it's fine if you just play Kelsey on FanDuel. And then
Mm-hmm.
on DraftKings, if you want to play Pacheco, you certainly can. Chiefs are going to be harder to come by on DK. I'll say that right now.
For sure. For sure. All right. Let's move on. Last game of the slate. Jared, we have a chance to get out of here in under 2 hours. Pretty excited about that. Let's talk about this last game though. Packers and Broncos facing off against each other. Packers 1 point favorites in the Mile High City. Over under is at 45. Let's talk about this Packers team first. They take on a pretty easy matchup in terms of what they have against Denver, who I think showed some flashes of what this defense could really be when they faced off against the Chiefs. I don't
Yeah,
know what to attribute that to, though. I don't know if I attribute that to like the Chiefs' general struggles in the red zone, or that maybe this Denver defense is finally taking the leap they need. I want to hear your opinion. Like, do you think we can still rely on this Denver defense being as bad as it has been over the first, 5, 6 weeks of the season?
I think it's a case of a couple situations. First case being, you say that what if the Chiefs convert on 2 touchdowns and they win by 21 points, even if
Yeah.
they convert one more time. I know they covered a 10.5 point spread. Like if they win by 17, I think maybe we're feeling a bit differently about Denver. But at the same time, you get a spot where if you're Denver, you probably are kind of, you're getting excited about potentially being able to win this week. The weather is really nice, by the way. I have not checked. I've not checked to see when the Packers left for this game. Hopefully they left and they're there today, because it takes a couple days to get used to things in elevation. So hopefully they are leaving today at the time of this podcast recording. But I do think that it'll be one of the best weather games on the slate. It's going to be almost 80 degrees in this spot with little to no chance of showers, and we don't really have much of a chance of showers anywhere else outside of the Seahawks game and Buffalo. But again, I think that if weather's not a factor, I think Denver has to feel pretty good about coming in and being able to stay competitive with a team that is just going through it right now. And there's obviously pros to the Packers spot too. The pros are the fact that you have a bye week where you get Luke Musgrave back, you get Christian Watson under another week healthy, you get Jordan Love, if you want to call him a rookie. Technically he is, so he gets the rookie bye. And I think that this is a spot where you're coming off of 2 really horrible performances for the Packers, and you think that he can take the next jump. It would probably start here because Denver's defense has been that bad. So I do like the matchup for a variety of reasons for the Packers. The main concern that I have, not the fact that we signed James Robinson, but the reason we did, and that's because Aaron Jones is questionable coming into or off of the bye week into a new week. That concerns me quite a bit, and I don't really know how to view that at the moment. He was limited at Wednesday's practice, which is good, but I don't know if that means that, like, because they've had guys in their room, Emmanuel Wilson. They have had practice squad guys jump up when Aaron Jones is missed. If James Robinson's coming in, that means something else is happening. So I
Yeah.
worry about the health status of Aaron Jones. And I don't know if AJ Dillon is a smash play against Denver if he gets the clear running back one role. So again, I think that there are, I guess, starting with the Packers in general, I think Jordan Love is a cash game option. Maybe not my favorite, but I think that he definitely could be a serviceable option for you. I know the fantasy point numbers haven't necessarily been great as of late, but if he's giving you the opportunity to score on the ground and throw 1 to 2 passing touchdowns, I think that he can pay off price tags on a quarterback slate that, again, is not great. Like, I don't like the Josh Allen spot. I think Mahomes is underperformed and he's very highly priced now. Lamar, talked about him. That's why I like him a lot. So there's things to like about the Packers. I still have more points to bring up, but thoughts on Love at these price tags, like more even
Yeah.
considerably on DraftKings at 5,800.
Yeah, it's definitely way too cheap. It's definitely a spot where he's going up against in a really good matchup against Denver. Like you said, the Chiefs scored one more touchdown last week, and I feel like our viewpoint might be a little bit different on what Denver brings to the table. So um, I definitely like the spot. I definitely think that there's a ton of upside at this price tag, being under 6K. And if you're not going to go to a really expensive QB, I think Jordan Love could definitely be your guy.
It looks at the moment to me right now that you're deciding between one of Love or Geno Smith on DraftKings. I think that Lamar could be a little bit too out of that price range. Mahomes, I think he's in play for tournaments, and you can play Mahomes in cash. We're just a little bit more strict on some of what we want to spend our money on. I'd much
Hmm.
rather just try to get Cup and figure it out, and then try to
Yeah.
pay down a quarterback a bit. That's why I kind of brought up some of the guys that are going to be at the lower range of QB, and I think that Jordan Love and Geno Smith are kind of in this range where you feel a bit more comfortable about the floor they present. But if you're playing Kenneth Walker, you're not going to be playing Geno Smith. So that's kind of where that led me to that decision at the moment. Again, very early, but that's kind of my lean there. FanDuel, 7,800. That is a tougher price to say, why don't we just play Lamar Jackson? And I think that that's probably
Hmm.
where I'd lean there. Jordan Love, not necessarily a running quarterback, but has shown that he can do that in some instances. I don't know. I think that the Green Bay spot is one of the spots that I have circled because their team total on a slate that's very bad is still respectable, and this game should stay close, and Green Bay should be pushed and hopefully not embarrassed on this again.
Yeah.
But this could actually it could underperform tremendously too, so I should mention that.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's definitely the chance for it, but I feel pretty confident in that Green Bay will be able to put up some points here. I think Luke Musgrave is the main guy. Like
Yep.
I think all the coach talk is really good with them saying that they want to get him more involved. How much more involved can you get him? He got 7 targets in the last game. But if you're going to get him
Yep.
more involved than that, I mean, it's looking pretty good in the spot against a Denver defense. We just saw them give up massive numbers against Kelsey, and
Hmm.
Kelsey wasn't an outlier. It was more towards the norm. They've been really bad against the tight end position all year long, and
Yeah.
so I think Luke Musgrave is the guy that I like the most here. Any wide receivers that you like? Do you like Watson? Do you like Romeo Dubes? Do you like anyone?
First point on the Musgrave stuff, I think is the easiest to get something of a pass catcher in this offense. I think that you take one game out of Musgrave's rookie season so far, and that was the game that he had one catch, and on that catch he got concussed and missed the rest of the game. So coming back and being able to get 6 for 34 is not great, but for a PPR format, it's really good for you. So he is still on track. Like he still has yet to get that first touchdown. But again, same situation as Love. Technically a rookie buy situation.
Hmm.
I like the matchup, and I think that he is the guy on DraftKings at tight end this week. You should be playing him in cash games. Uh, as far as the other receivers go, I think it is turning into a spot where um, you're gonna have opportunities for Romeo Dobbs to get touchdowns, but I do think this is going to be the switch that ignites the Watson run here. I think that we saw it was a horse collar tackle away from a touchdown last or a week and a half ago, and so you don't like the inefficiency that he's had through 2 games, but you do like where this is going. And so we don't, can't necessarily use data to help us out here, but I don't mind the ability for Watson to obviously house anything that comes his way. And we know the matchup is good. Price tag probably not the greatest on FanDuel, but still in a spot where if you believe in the hype like I do think this is the beginning of trying to get him in a positive direction. You could be in 3 weeks sitting there in Watson's 7,800 on FanDuel.
Yeah, for sure. I can get behind it. All right. Anything else on this Green Bay side? If not, let's talk about Denver a little bit.
I just want to get your opinion on the Jones Dillon stuff. Is he like a clear cash game lock and load if he plays?
I think so. I think it's really hard at 6,400. If he's going to get 20 carries again, like I was so out on him against the Raiders, and to see me get scorched like that was really tough. I think if Jones is out, Dylan's got to be your guy. I know James Robinson just got signed, but like at the end of the day,
Oh, I
like
don't trust
how
that. Yeah, it would
how
be
much is
Dillon.
he gonna? Yeah, yeah, but like who else do they have to factor into things? It's really going to be a threat to Dylan's productivity on
Yeah.
the field. I don't think it's anyone.
So you answered one part of my question. I agree. If Jones is out, I think Dillon. You're playing Dillon. More even scarier, but you're probably playing him over Jameer Gibbs. Uh,
Yeah, probably.
but what if Jones is in? Are you going out of your way to play him?
I don't think so, but it's close. I think what ends up preventing you from doing it is the fact that if you go Jones instead of Gibbs or Jones instead of, whoever, if you're playing Jacobs and you're going, whoever that second running back is, your other running back's Evans, then, and you go Jones over Gibbs, that probably prevents you from getting Cup or prevents you from
Probably.
getting something that you really need in this build. So
Yeah, yeah,
I, I
yeah. I
think,
mean,
I think that I'm fine with staying away from it if Jones plays.
yeah, I don't want to give everything away, and I guess it's fine considering that it's Thursday. But I'm doing everything I
Yeah,
can to get Cup and Kelsey and Jacobs in. So
yeah,
that would severely hinder that if we had to do that.
for sure.
But okay, we'll see what happens with Aaron Jones this week. It's a beautiful matchup for Green Bay. I also think in some ways it could be interesting for Denver to push Green Bay, and I think this could be a sneaky shootout. It could either be a sneaky shootout or it could be terribly underperforming.
Yeah, I'm not sure which, man, because I don't know who I want from this Denver side. We can kind of move over there now. I do want a running back, but like, man, this three man this 3-man
Yeah,
RBBC is going to be tough with Javante, Jaleel, and Samaje. I really want Javante to take a turn here. I
so
feel
do I.
like he can. I feel like Kansas City was a really rough matchup. I feel like Chicago, he was injured, or I don't feel like it. He was injured in the Chicago game. Miami, they were getting absolutely rolled. Washington and Las Vegas, he was kind of recovering from the injury from last season. And so, like, they really have a chance to kind of turn Javante loose a little bit. I just feel like Jaleel and Samaje are kind of holding him back, and that's what's making me really struggle with this spot.
Yep. You want running backs against Green Bay. The problem is what you said, and so knowing that all these three guys are going to get touches, you just can't play them.
Yeah, and then I don't really want to touch a wide receiver, man. I don't. I kind of believe in that secondary, and it's just I don't know. I don't want to touch anything else. The Jerry Judy stuff is really tough right now with
Yeah.
all the media stuff with him, and I would like Cortland Sutton, but I'm like 90% sure he's going to get Jair Alexander defense, and so that rules that out. Like it
Yep.
just everything kind of checked itself off for Denver. Where I'm sure someone will go off here, but I just can't. I can't predict who it is right now.
Yeah. I mean, if Sutton doesn't get that touchdown, which was a fantastic catch, this team just doesn't have much to look at.
No.
Russell Wilson was another DraftKings eligible quarterback. He's in the same price range. He hasn't been all that bad. It's just Green Bay, you beat him to the run. So I know
Yeah,
Russell
for
Wilson
sure.
had a bad game against the Chiefs, but other than that, he's actually looked pretty solid.
He has definitely a lot of good stats, not necessarily good
Sure.
performances, but
Fair
good
enough.
fantasy stuff definitely. All right, let's talk about some pick'em stuff and then let's get out of here, Jared. Packers, not much is up, mostly because of the fact that we're still waiting on that Aaron Jones news, but we do have a Luke Musgrave number at 31 and a half. I think that's the number I'm the most enticed in taking, if anything.
Yep, like the Luke Musgrave stuff. I also can get behind Christian Watson total yards. I think, again, like I said, this is a spot where you're looking for a lot of yards after the catch here. This is Underdog Fantasy's 100K Sunday pick. So I
Mhm.
definitely don't mind Christian Watson at 50 and a half. Again, there's a little boomer bust risk there, but I think that
Mhm.
that's where I would lean with anything outside of Musgrave. And other than that, we're waiting on Aaron Jones.
Yes, sir. All right. I think we're all done here, Jared. I don't think there's anything else to cover. Let's go over some predicting scores and then we'll get out of here. Let's start with the first game on the slate, Lions and Ravens. What do you got?
Lions, Ravens. I think that we actually see a spot where I know that they're banged up in the running back room, but I believe this is one of Detroit's biggest tests outside of Kansas City so far. And
Hmm.
they kind of had a big test against Seattle and didn't work out for them. I think they're in a spot where this is like the can Jared Goff be the guy? And I think
Hmm.
that I will back that this time around. And maybe it bites me, but I think Detroit comes out and takes care of Baltimore coming off of a London game. So I'll go Detroit 23, Baltimore 20.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think the London game is what kind of sells me on the Lions winning this one. Even on the road, I think that just coming back from London is so tough. And we've seen it for several teams now. Only team that's mastered is the Jags. I think they're the best at it in the
Sure.
league, but everyone else has been really struggling with it. So with those struggles, I think Lions end up winning this one, and I think it's going to end up being 20-17, really close. I think Lions end up getting the win though. All right, next game up is going to be Browns and Colts. I don't think much looks positive for the Colts here. I feel like that Anthony Richardson news kind of sucked the life out of the room. I think Browns end up winning this one, even if it's just a really methodical game by them. Super low scoring. Give me 17-10 Browns.
Defense wins this game. I think that the Browns will end up surviving somehow. I don't even know who's playing quarterback for them, but we'll see how it goes. I'm going to say this is one of our lowest scoring games of the season.
No,
We'll go 13-6 Cleveland.
definitely possible. All right. Next game up is the Bucks and the Falcons here. Oh man, this one's tough. I do not know which side to go with. If the Bucks ended up winning last week like I thought they would, I think this would be pretty easily Bucks. I think I still lean Bucks, but extremely close game. Give me 17-14. I think just low scoring battle here. Again, Atlanta
Sure.
defense has not been bad, so
Yeah, I mean, I'm siding with Tampa as well. I think that you look at the quarterbacks, and I would say that Baker still has the leg up in terms of being able to run the offense. So I don't love this. I think this game is terrible. And I think that you just have to pick a side and hope that you're right on that front. I'll go ahead and side with Tampa as well. And I think, taking care of Bijan Robinson is the main importance here. And I think that they'll have the personnel to do that. So I will go similarly to you. I'll make it a little bit more high scoring. We'll go Tampa Bay 20, Falcons 16.
all right. Next game up is going to be the Bills and the Patriots. Bills win this one 24-10. Low scoring, but Bills cover.
Yep. Mac Jones is going to lose his job to Will Greer. And that's how I'll
Oh
go with this
man,
one.
tough
Yeah.
time, tough time.
I still think Buffalo could struggle on offense, but I still think that they get close to their team total. So I'll go 23-6. The Bills win.
Gotcha. All right. Giants and Commanders up next. Giants win this game, man. I think regardless if it's Taylor or Jones, I think Giants win. At home, feeling good after how well they competed last week against a very good team. Giants win this one. Man, this is tough. 24-17.
I could also see this you can make cases for every single one of these games going under. So
Yeah.
I'll say that Tyrod Taylor probably gives them a better chance to win than Daniel Jones at the moment. And so that definitely pushes things a few ways. And a lot of our leans were on Giants players. So I think that we kind of just have to roll with that and go for it. I think this could be the Saquon Barkley game, and we'll see if I'm right on that front. But yeah, Giants, we'll say 23, Commanders 16.
All right. Next game up, Bears and Raiders. What do you got for this one?
Bears Raiders. Vegas wins because of Josh Jacobs. So
Yeah, yeah.
I will say the final score will be 24 Raiders, Chicago Bears 13.
I like it. All right. Next game up, Rams and Steelers. What do you got here?
Rams Steelers, one of the more competitive games, I think, hopefully. I believe in Pittsburgh coming off the bye. Hopefully they get two things figured out with a couple guys coming back on offense. And I do like the Rams just passing and hoping this thing gets enough pushback. So I'll go under the total, but I'll still think it's pretty close. And I will say Rams 24, Steelers 20.
I like it. I think I'll go over the total, but still really close. Rams end up winning 27-24. I like where that lands. All right. Cardinals and Seahawks. What do you got?
Cardinals, Seahawks. I'm not going to touch this spread number. This feels very fishy. And I could see ways that Arizona backdoors this. But in terms of banking on things to happen, Kenneth Walker has a really good shot to score 2 or 3 times. Obviously, one of the stronger candidates to score in general. And I think that that's kind of the way that they will play this one out with some of their wide receivers banged up. So I will say Seattle wins comfortably, but maybe gets backdoor covered. We'll say 27-20.
I think because of the fact they control ball so much here, Seattle does when they get up big. I'm going low scoring. Give me 21-9, and Seahawks end up winning and
Sure.
covering. All right. Chiefs and Chargers. I'm gonna come out first. I think Chiefs might roll the Chargers in this game. I think
Okay.
there's a chance of it, man. I think this defense is just playing too well right now. Give me 28 to 17. 20 to
Look,
17 Chiefs.
yeah, we talked about, and if you're listening to this part of the podcast and didn't get this, we talked about all the positives and negatives for this game. A lot of negatives for the Chargers. Things definitely stacking up schedule wise against them, and some other things. So if you go back to that game, you can just follow it on the, just go and search for where we talk about it, and then you can listen to that again. But I think the Chiefs. I will side with you in saying there's a greater chance of there being just a complete disparity, but I also think that the Chiefs they'll cover, but I'll probably keep it under double digits. So I'll say the Chiefs fall under their team total, but still cover, and we'll go 24-17.
I like it. All right, last game: Green Bay and the Denver Broncos. I have no clue how this game goes. I really think the Packers win, but like I
Yeah,
don't feel I
it
don't feel
doesn't feel good.
confident in it.
I
No, it does not. It does not feel good.
Yep, I
It just feels
specifically
like the
wore this
Broncos.
today for that
Yeah,
reason. So
it feels like the Broncos stay in this somehow. So a very scared. I say Packers win, and they win 24-20. But man, I have a real feeling that they end up losing this game weirdly. I
yeah,
don't know.
you're looking. I mean, look, this it's as a Packers fan, you're just looking at the schedule and you're like, oh, Denver, we have a chance to win this one.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at the moment. And I think that off the bye week, I know Denver actually got a couple days more rest too. So let's not
Mm-hmm.
forget that.
Mini pie.
They're at home as well, so they don't have to travel, and that's going to be potentially a problem for Jordan Love. We'll see, but again, you got a week to prepare. You got some time off, and I think that they have some guys coming back. It all kind of hinges on Aaron Jones, right? And I think that if
Mm-hmm.
Jones is in, I think the whole team elevates, even though that would mess things up for fantasy. I will go Packers winning, shocker, because I have bet against Denver every single week this season. We'll go Packers win, grosser game than advertised. We'll say 20-17.
I like it. All right, Jared. We've covered all the games. The I will say, like, lots of fun primetime games. Not tonight. Don't
Yep,
get me wrong. Saints and Jags is very ugly. But the Eagles and Dolphins game looks like it has potential to be one of those game of the year type games.
sure.
Looks like that's going to be a lot of fun, and I know as a Niners fan, I'm excited for hopefully a bounce back against the Vikings. But let's wrap this up with the main slate and tell the members what you like and what you don't like about this week.
What I don't like is, and this is not as much of a problem because I let off the show by saying I had a lot of money. I think we've been able to figure out how to pay up for the studs that we really want. I think that those guys are Josh Jacobs, Travis Kelsey, where you can, and Cooper Kupp, most importantly. And then you kind of just have to wait and hope that you got the injury news that you want and make some. Like you're going to have to make one or two uncomfortable decisions at the running back position to make things work this week. And quarterback is as up in the air as it has been to start the season. We've had these kind of streamer guys that we've kind of had to just everybody funnels towards, and I don't think we have that this week. So you have to kind of just figure out how to handle the QB position and make some choices that are difficult at the running back position. And I think you have this is it doesn't continue. I think this wasn't as bad as last week or the week before, but we're in the thick of it now where things aren't going to be very easy the rest of the way through.
Yeah, it gets tough. I mean, like this is like the mid-season stuff where like it starts to get really tough to build stuff out. But I think
Yep.
we're really well set up. I think we have like a really good core of who we want to spend up for, and I think the value plays are certainly there. Obviously, it's Thursday, so like a lot of things are going to change between now and Sunday morning, but we'll have you guys covered like we always do. Uh, just general housekeeping notes. Keep an eye out for articles. They're going to be all out this week on Saturday. Keep an eye out for Prop Optimizer. I know we had a little bit of a problem with the projection system last week, but it is back up and running. Those are posted for Thursday Night Football. They'll be posted for Sunday as well. And keep an eye out for college football stuff too. We've been doing really well over there. So it's been really fun. This is our last week that we get to solely dedicate ourselves to the NFL product. And then we have NBA coming in next week, which will be a
Yep.
lot of fun. And I think we can announce this here. I don't think there's any problems with this. That video or that podcast will also be on video. So y'all will see our faces every day for NBA stuff and or every day, Monday through Friday. And on top of also the NFL podcast. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. We'll be doing something live. We're kind of working on the technical side of things, but it'll be a live product as well as something you can watch on YouTube afterwards and even on audio if you want to. So keep an eye out for that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this podcast. If you had any questions, please ask us in the Discord. And Jared, any other final thoughts? If not, let's get out of here, man.
No more final thoughts. I guess there's one piece of news that just came in, and it was that Deshaun Watson's practicing today. So,
ooh, all right.
interesting.
That makes that game a lot more brown sided than I think maybe we've said in our prediction, but that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get out of here. Thank y'all for listening, and as always, my name is Joshua Riemer. Good night and good skill.